Sort of coming Chapter 933. After the mountains, there are many exotic flowers, but there are no birds and ants. Moreover, Chen Ping found a small incident. He had previously entered the Xianjia mansion and saw the cranes hovering around the mountains. After the four people climbed, the cranes had disappeared. No matter whether Chen Ping looked up at the foot of the mountain, he overlooked the mountains and rivers in the foothills. Later, after the Huangshi and Sun Dao people searched for treasure, until the back mountain, Chen Pingan never saw a trace of the crane. If there is such a place in the world, and the assumption is a worse result, the owner of this place is ill-intentioned to all visitors. Then the other party is definitely a master of calculations. The ordinary folks, the wilderness of the mountain, are eager to enter this mountain, and the blind crane will be given up. It is more shocked by the subsequent white jade arch bridges and arches. It is regarded as a paradise on earth, plus the bones of the bones everywhere. Naturally, it is considered to be no land. For those who practice the Tao, those inadvertent sights are true, especially at the first sight, which will affect the mind more, quietly, and unaware. In the future, as long as it is a practicing qi, regardless of the level of the realm, it will be repeatedly scrutinized. At the first sight, Chen Pingan saw the green mountains and green waters and the snow-white cranes. It was no exception. The first thought that came to life was a good fairy house, so good for a mountain. After seeing all the way, it is nothing more than a suffix of the ruins outside the Xianjia mansion. The fairy family is still a fairy family, and Fu Yuan is still a blessing. The clues everywhere, extremely complicated, it seems to be a mystery everywhere. Seeing more, it will make people feel a mess, lazy thinking. Chen Pingan also has not had a lot of clues, but the savage abrupt rises like a lift. Once the crane is a kind of delicate eye-catching method, plus the bells of the Sun Dao people's waist that are unexploded for no reason, then reluctantly you can pull out a line, or the worst possibility. This kind of look at the best and the worst of the two sides of the line first, is the key to Chen Pingan's ability to live out of the bones and valleys of the Skull Beach in Beijing. The world is complicated, seeing and not seeing, thinking and not wanting, is learning, it is hard work. Of course, there are also mistakes that have been misunderstood. It is nothing but ignorance and death, or a confused chance. The three people continued to travel to the back of the mountain. Compared to the death of the former mountain, at least it seems that it is really a lot of leisure. As for the life and death of Di Yuanfeng, Chen Pingan did not have a little burden. It's not that she is not an ancestor. If she is a person who has a good mind, Chen Pingxing will still manage a tube and make a fair sale. At the moment, there is a green bamboo on the side of the road. It is quite eye-catching, falling in the eyes of three people, lonely and bitter, and bamboo shadows. The bamboo raft is as thick as a bowl, and the bamboo leaves are green and dripping, and it is not a rhetorical statement. It is a veritable green scent. Many bamboo leaves have pointed leaves, condensation and water droplets. The wind blows over and is faltering. At the time of this bamboo, just a drop of green water drops fell into the mud, and instantly dissipated. Chen Pingan looked at it with great attention. Although it was not the green glazed tile on the Taoist brick, it gave birth to the essence of water transport, but it also reached the aura. Exaggerated. When Sun Dao was passing by, he tapped it with his finger, listened to it, and snorted, saying, "There is a doorway." When Chen Ping stared at the green bamboo, he turned and took off the parcel. He took the sword from the ruler, held it in his hand, and rewrapped the parcel. Then he smiled and said, working with the grandson, shaking the bamboo, "I take some bamboo leaves and tip water." After all, Sun Daoren is a true-looking monk in the sea. He can see the depth and shake his head and smile. "Chen Daoyu, advise you not to do more." The bamboo leaves and water drops that these auras gave birth to, the ordinary utensils cannot keep this rich aura. Mo said that it is directly holding the jug to fill the water. If you pick up a bamboo leaf and even drop the water, carefully store it. If you leave this weird bamboo, you can't keep it. The high-thickness person said this, and did not delay him to take off the robe and take out a celadon vial with a picture of the hermit. Huang Shi suspected that the two men were tempered, and one foot squatted on the bamboo pole. The water droplets fell like a light rain. The Sundao people laughed, and their body shape shook, and they stepped on the foot, and filled the water with a plum-green porcelain bottle. Chen Pingan is no exception. He does not want any water droplets to fall apart. Without competing with Sundao, many water droplets that are about to fall into the mud will be pooled into a line. Slow income and raise the sword. Huang Shi squinted at the old man's tactics and did not see any flaws that were doubtful. Since Chen Pingan took out the sword, he no longer put it up, hanging it around his waist, and the water droplets of the heavens and the earth condensed together, but the weight of the 7 or 8 wines was a gloomy weight of 10 kilograms. The three continued on their way. Chen Ping looked back at the green bamboo. Is it like the bamboo forest that Wei Wei carefully planted in Kaitanshan? If it is really necessary to recognize the ancestors, it is from the Qingshan mountain in Zhuhai Dongtian. Otherwise, according to the book of the immortal book purchased from the Hanging Mountain in the same year, many of the fairy bamboos in the world are dozens of different kinds. In the case of condensing water and transportation, it seems that the bamboo gods are not so vast. It's a pity that, like the chessboard stone table, you can't move away. Sun Daoren felt that he was still not happy. He reached out and smiled. He said, "Bamboo is open to the gods, light and qi, poor roads practiced in the early years, and throughout the books, I have seen ancient books, bamboo leaves boiled tea, the most thirst in the heart of the Qing dynasty, you only need to use a bamboo leaf to hold the grip, plus a few lotus seeds on the mountain, 1 or 2 cups of tea underwater belly, you have to teach people to float like a fairy." Chen Pingan blinded the eyes of the Sun Dao, and looked at the slender green bamboo that did not move to the face. Since this is all the case, then there is something to be said, he can't really open his mouth. Sun Daoren took back his hand and looked indifferently, forget it, this opportunity is reserved for later generations. Huang Shi falls down the stone road, these bamboo leaves, if they are the 5 sects of the water law, refining and refining as the life, cannot be the treasure. The treasure is in front of the eyes, be careful not to take the blame, Sun Daochang really does not pick how many. It is a younger generation that is not used to make tea and is given to the baby's mountain mine house. It is also a good gift to return to the teacher's door. Sun Dao Ren Yun Xiaofeng said, the practice of monasticism involves the fundamentals, and you can give away the opportunity. I am not a preacher of the younger generation. The gift is too heavy, but not beautiful. It is nothing. Chen Pingan whispered, Sun Dao's long words are like beads, and they are thought-provoking. Sun Daoren carefully put the celadon vial into the sleeve, slowly moving, smiling and unpredictable. Some of the Huang Shi masters couldn't stand this wooling national sanctuary. From the beginning to the end, after learning that Sun Dao was a disciple of Lei Shen's house, Jing Ming, he was very diligent in Sun Dao's side. Huang Shi suddenly took the golden body of the body, and then used the strength of the 5 realms, a little bit of mercy, and after measuring the other person's body, he punched the black robe without warning. The old man, screaming, the ladder flew out, tumbling all the way, struggling to get up, seemed to be beaten, sitting on the ground, suddenly his throat frowned, turned his head and spit out a blood, as if he had just returned to God, stood up. The hands are hidden in the sleeves. Apparently, they are already at the fingertips. The air machine lingers around the cuffs and smashes. The surname is yellow, can you find death? Huang Shi's heart is big, it really is a waste. Sun Daoren was even scared to rush out of the tens of thousands of feet, but also grabbed a rifle that had just been bought with Qin Daoyu. the three men showed a horn. Huang Shi did not look at the old man in black robes. He just turned his head and smiled at Sun Dao. Sun Dao Chang, people are sneaky, have to guard against it. We are with Qin Gongzi, so it is an ally who knows the routes, but this person, halfway encounter, if it is a scourge of the top of the garlic, we are not in the way. In the end, all the treasures of the body, take a life, marry others, I don't want Sun Dao Chang. Sun Daoren's words are in the heart of the lake, and Qin Ping's words, Qin Dao Yu, how do you say, do you want to kill one? This Huang Shi is not good at it. If it's really tearing the skin, the two brothers are a grasshopper on the line, who don't hide. In comparison, Sun Daoren is of course more convinced of the old black robe, all the way down, has some relationship with good and evil, the relationship is not big, more still feel that Qin Dao Yu, the road is weak, the thread is not big. Of course, if the old man of the black robe is behaving and acting, the shrewd and savvy city is everywhere. It is a matter of seeing the wind and the rudder. Sun Dao people are not willing to cooperate with them, bet their lives, and confront the Huang Shi together. So with Qin Ping's heartfelt words, Sun Dao's mouth is talking about the words of the paste. Qin Dao Yu, Huang Lao's move is too much, but now the situation is unpredictable. It's better to make a wedding dress for others. It's better for both of you to sell a poor face. Qin Dao Yu's a little bit of peace, and the poor road will let Huang's younger brother apologize, just as this matter has been turned over. How? Qin Pingan angered and sweared, nothing. After smashing such a punch, I suffered such an innocent disaster. I am so badly hurt. If I apologize and finish, it is better to let the Huang Shi eat me away, and it will be even. Huang Shi pulled the corner of his mouth, opened the corner of the parcel, grabbed a piece of utensils, and gently threw it at the old man in the black robe. He smiled, there is not enough compensation, then add a gift. I saw that the old man in the black robe had a bright eye and hesitated a little. He still had a hand in his sleeve and secretly smashed his hand. He had already raised his hand in his hand and tried to reach out to catch the antique bronze mirror. Sun Dao people changed their minds and quickly reminded them, don't pick up. It's just late. Huang Shi stepped on the ground and took the martial arts of the 6 peaks. He came to the old man in front of the black robe and gave a punch. The old man in the black robe was stunned. He was in the same place, and the whole person was stiff. Not only could he not catch the bronze mirror of the courtesy, but he had to suffer from the punch. Only Huang Shi suddenly stopped his fist, only a burst of punches over the face of the poor worm, the hair of the horn swept back. Huang Shi actually received the punch, turned the heavy bag, turned and left, after a few steps, turned and smiled, Qin brother, this bronze mirror sent you. Sun Dao people lamented in their hearts. How did I find such a long-lost demented ally? Bitter also. The next road, it is not good to go. Sun Daoren only saw that Qin Dao Yu smiled apologetically, squatting down, picking up the bronze mirror that fell to the ground, and stuffing it into a dry blue cloth package. Even if this guy has tried to hide his timidity, he can still tremble with his hands. Sun Dao people saw a straight headache, shook his head, turned to follow the Huang Shi. Perhaps it was a bit sad for this guy, his unfortunate anger, and his heartfelt resentment, Qin Dao Yu. Next, remember your position, don't be too close to yellow this guy. It is best to let yourself and the Huang Shi be separated by a poor road, or if you are close to the yellow master, you will have more and more symbols, and how can you not let the pure Wufu close? This is not easy to understand. Sun Dao Chang, I understand the truth, but I really have a dry shoulder with the yellow master. I have a blank mind, and my hands and feet don't listen. It's really a footstep that can't keep up with these reasons. After the man got a bronze mirror, he quickly followed the Sun Dao, slowed down, and did not walk side by side with Sun Dao, just behind Sun Dao, and he followed suit. Sun Dao sighed and said nothing more. It's a good idea to eat along, wise, and not to be saved. Chen Ping went to the end and gently wiped the blood on his lips. Wu Wu is not a bad luck, and he is often beaten with blood. Chen Pingon is good, and he has to come by himself. However, when I thought of the bronze mirror that was very old, Chen Ping had no grievances. The essays are extremely small, with the front being the arrogant pawn and the back being the fighting squad. The mirror of cult is undoubted, and it is an antique mirror, because Chen Ping's previous careful examination revealed the extremely subtle Miyagi, but this is the most valuable. Because dare to be above the bronze mirror, quietly adding the word making to the surname is the guarantee of the rank. The Book of the Gods has been recorded in the relevant literature. Among them, the Lipu made on the ancient mirror of the sea beast grape, the light mirror or the Nalan Sanshan made on the fairy night mirror. The antique mirror is the most valuable city. As for the later generations of bronze mirrors that are similar to imitation, it is often a trick to sneak a slap in the air. Even if it is very ingenious, it is still a big pit. If someone thinks that they are missing the treasure, it is better to sell the high price. It is estimated that the monks can repent and vomit blood. Fong Kai Chen Ping almost did not hold back, want to let the Sun Dao people touch the touch first, the name of the United States to help palms, and they are now in the bag. The hand of Sun Dao Chang, and the fight with Yu Jingqing, have passed the light. Regardless of this harvest, it is very likely that the Dragon King Bamboo Whip Small Cage only said that the string of pagoda bells hanging around the waist of the high thin road, obviously not a product. Otherwise, outside the mountain road view, the string of pagoda bells will never actively break the warning. On the back of the mountain, the building is far less than the front mountain of the row, and it is quite spectacular. There are only a handful of them. The three men all the way down the mountain, looking into the distance, sparse. It also saves a lot of trouble. In accordance with the old rules, the Yellow Master searched for a treasure, near a palace building group in front of him. Sun Dao people went to another place. There was a building high. Chen Pingon was assigned to the most nearby temple. After Chen Pingon and Sun Dao were separated, they were not in a hurry. It was like a leisurely walk in the mountains and waters. They took off the swords and took a bamboo leaf, which was really refreshing. The taste is faint, and there is no taste of alcohol. Just think of this auspicious green bamboo leaf tip dripping water. The gold is rare, the price is far better than the Xianzhou wine. Suddenly feels the taste is very beautiful, the aftertaste is endless. This mouth goes down. Drinking is not a tea, but a lot of fairy money. Can you not taste delicious? Looking back, I can't see the traces of Huang Shi and Sun Dao. Chen Ping will not raise the sword, and his body will be swaying, suddenly rushing past the high wall and floating. As if it fits in with the heavens and the earth, it can be so silent and uninteresting. At the foot of the mountain, the white jade arch bridge, there is a melee. With the customary words of Beiju Luzhou, it is that the brain is used as a drink and it is a true hero. The bridge-breaking battle that met the narrow road was very fierce. Even the royal family of the Fuzhou kingdom, who was looking for treasure on the mountain, heard the movement and had to give up the treasures that were at their fingertips and rushed to the battlefield. However, the Fuqua country enshrined more than one mind, and selected some treasures that were worthy of value. They were hidden in a loft room beam. The rest of the objects were wrapped together and moved slightly to the corner of the house. Returning with Bai Yu and Xiao Houyi will not reveal the slightest foot. As for how to bring the treasures of the treasure out of the place, one step at a time is. Gao Ling has taken out the arsenal of the arsenal, and a pair of gods have been exposed to the body, and joined hands with the Hofu family to protect Zhang Qing's safety. And Zhang Qing, the teacher of Yuan Ying's master of the Yuan's ancestors, was also pretending to be panic-stricken, and the North Pagoda's slogan Zai, combined with the previous swear words, was very useful, and almost no one believed it. The children of the biting national power will be a real 5-level monk, and have 2 powerful weapons of attack. The situation of the one-sided battle situation, after the Fushur state enshrined to join, it slightly regained some disadvantages. Zhang Qing hated the woman monk who wore the power fence and wore the robes of the city on the cloud. It was this person who took the lead in crossing the bridge and broke his plan to make a fortune. Not only that, the Tibetan woman who was hiding in the Tibetan head was extremely measured in the subsequent slaughter. She did not catch up with the golden body, but she would not sit on the mountain and let the monks and Wufu die. Every time Jailing can punch and kill, the female repairer has to stalk from it. Less than a fragrant martial arts, she took 2 defensive treasures from Jailing and the family to worship Wufu, and saved the lives of 7 or 8 people. The woman repaired 2 pieces of defensive life. One piece was a cyan jade bracelet that was circulated by Baoguang. It was indefinite, and a bright yellow color clouded gold and embroidered 5 dragons sat, even if it was a boxing in Jailing, but it was hollowed down in hunting. The ringing can't break it, but after a punch, the luster of the 5 golden dragons tends to be a bit faint, but the jade bracelet and the sitting ring take turns to sit back and smash back into her key gas house, soaked by the aura. After that, the golden luster will soon be restored. The siege of more than 40 people, the treasures of all people's attack and punishment are all out, and the momentum is huge. If it is not for the monks to cooperate with the strangers, some of the pure Wufus of the 4 borders and 5 realms will not dare to fight too close, mostly by bows. Far attack, or handing out boxing and attacking the bridge across the bank, between each other, cannot be closely connected. Jailing and other people may be more difficult to cope. However, once Yamazawa's wilderness chooses to fight, not to mention Zhang Qing, who is not seen in blood, is the Jailing, who was born in the military, and is envied with the family who used to be in the Hofu. When the Hofu family was enshrined, they were attacked by secret treasures. They pierced the abdomen and the blood flow was not limited. They only relied on Wufujin's body to hold a sigh of relief, and instead of jailing, they were good at fighting, and they were trapped by the army of guns and forests. No stranger, so it is still a surprise. As for the royal offering of the Fugwa state, it was even more miserable. It was smashed by a slashing weapon. If Jailing helped the majority of the boxing, this person was also given the secret fan of Zhang Qing's hand in front of him. Out of the air, there was a fairy screen on the snowy night road, but the old of Fushi was about to die on the spot. It's just that Jailing, the 2 golden martial arts, is not vegetarian. Even if there is a colorful bird's martial arts to help fight the boxing, it's still killing as many as 7 or 8 people. The death is miserable, no exception, just like the execution. The 5 horses on the corpse. Therefore, the spur of the water dragon Zongdan Dancian White Rush came, not the icing on the cake, but the charcoal in the snow. It's just that Bai Hao has just sacrificed 1 attack and 1 defense against 2 pieces of the magic weapon. Then there is Sun Qingyu, the young housekeeper of Kaik House, who took the initiative to choose to fight against this big brother. The shape of the white stork is surrounded by a set of 18 water dragons and ancestral temples. The white enamel itself is a genius monk who is naturally suitable for practicing the water law, and those who spend money in essays have a deep meaning and a hint of the remnant national movement, which was once the opening of the coins of an ancient dynasty, was scattered around the earth, both on the ancient Taoist temples, in the ancient tombs, or in the later royal treasury, collected by the Shuangzong. In 2 sets, 18 pieces were made up, and 1 of them was given to the day. In fact, this set of water in the Shuilong Zongzu temple is a good object to win the money, both offensive and defensive. However, Bai Yu still sacrificed a mountain weight, which is the proud work of a Qin sage in the history of Luzhou, and the Guqin is called snow. After the 2 Jin Dan monks shot, the battle became more intense. There was another hoarse voice of 1,000 knives, and everyone was loudly reminded, "We will kill Zaihui first." Zhang Qing is very angry. This guy is really difficult. After a few words of speaking, there are 4 or 2 effects. It was only the other party who apparently used a secret law on the mountain, plus the thrill of killing, and became a pot of porridge, so that Zhang Qing could not clearly identify the person. The military commander Gao Ling and the 2 enshrines will not dare to watch their own being killed by the technique and artifacts. However, once they take care of him too much, it is inevitable that they will lose sight of each other. Once there is a leak, it will easily hurt the whole body. I have to be distracted by the white. Zhang Qing dared to assert that as long as he is killed in a golden body, or someone is seriously injured, temporarily lost his strength, he has to withdraw from the battlefield and return to the mountains. Wild Repair and Wufu will definitely fight more. In fact, Zhang Qing actually reminded Jailing and the 2 enshrines from the beginning. Every time they join forces to kill people, if they can, it is best to pick 1 or 2, and to beat a group of 3 or 4 people to kill the hills and kill them. It has a shocking effect. It can prevent the other party from revenge for friends and become a desperate person. It is just that people are not as good as days. Zhang Qing has a lot of calculations. The result may be that the time went out without turning the yellow calendar. It can be said that everything is not smooth, and later, Gao Ling with the 2 offerings, it is no longer possible to be so cautious. I am looking for the target to kill people here. The other person has more people, but regardless of the 3 or 71, the chaotic weapons, the insidious sinister techniques, the first brains come over and say. Until this moment, Zhang Qingkai began to regret that he should not be so conceited. It will be an easy task to explore all the opportunities in the local area. It should be gradual, and each breaks, instead of feeling that this group of people, it is not difficult to fight together to kill a Yuaning, why bother with a group of arrogant ants? The result is that when Zhang Qing swayed and blocked everyone's way, he learned the number of the novels that Wan Fu was unable to open, and then began to chew Huanglian. In fact, it is not that Zhang Qing's previous calculations were worse. It's just a way of practicing, one in case, it's really coming, and when things are coming, it's 10,000 things. Bai Hao suddenly found himself in the water dragon ancestor Chuan Jin Dan, actually lost to the eyes of this young woman repairing the face. Bai Hao, angered with a heart, colored Hao Sun Qing. Do you dare to kill me? I am not afraid of enmity with my Shuolongzong, a peach blossom crossing Kaik house, can withstand the 5 palms of my family. The reason why the day is not directly loudly preached. In the end, it is the origin of the genealogy of the singer. Compared with the wild Yamazawa field repair, there are more scruples and more trade-offs. Sun Qing drove the attacking magic weapon, and the snowflakes that were produced by the Guqin snow-splitting strings were smashed, and then smiled and replied, "What are you talking about? How can I not understand?" White is very annoyed. Sun Qing. You really want to die with me? There are those 18 pressures to protect the surrounding area, and the white crickets are not too embarrassing to deal with them. What's more, this set of magic weapons, both offensive and defensive, is obvious. Bai Hao has not done all the best, let alone the ancestor of the ancestral head. There is no 1 or 2 of the finale for the jade to burn or to escape the miles. Therefore, the shameful anger of Bai Yu is more similar to Zhang Qing's state of mind. He has lost a good pattern of exclusive interests, and has no face of a large Jin Dan monk. However, Zhang Qing, who is already in danger, is white. The current situation is much better. Sun Qing still does not accept the account, smiled and said, "We are unconcerned Yamazawa wild repair, pay attention to a person who is dead, not dead for thousands of years." It is really too deceiving for a woman to say this. The white scorpion took a deep breath, and suddenly the mood was as quiet as water, and there was no more distracting thoughts. Even the situation of Zhang Qing could not be ignored at all. Since the generality of the priests is not reasonable, and both sides are Jindan's peers, they can only see the true chapter in the cultivation. Although Sun Qing is self-confident, it is far more relaxed than the white dragon, the one who has been in the golden dragon for a few days. In fact, the youngest Jindan housekeeper in the history of the colorful birdhouse has not slackened. In the face of a young genius of a fairy tales with a profound slogan, Sun Qing is waiting for an opportunity. The timing of a one-shot blow, if it is not successful, is when the two sides sit down to talk about the fairy. If the other side is 1 foot high, kill her. Sun Qing. Sun Qing also feels nothing. I can kill people, people can kill me. Therefore, the sword repair, which is like a teacher, will only say the sentence when traveling together. No one in the world can die. However, the land dragon of the Luzhou in that year actually said the latter part, but everyone in the world can make sense. In the latter half of the sentence, Sun Qing has not been able to listen in and feel that there is no reason. Just like him, I won't fight with him. Of course, I really want to arguing with Lu Jinglong, and I am sure to ask for it. Nothing beats him. When Lu Jinglong was the Jin Danjian, he used his mouth to tell the truth and persuaded a jade-like monster who planned to open the ring. Not only that, but he also became an enemy and friend with the old monster. The old monsters in turn avenged their entourage for a group of people, and they sent their ceremonies out of the country. The last time Sun Qing and Lu Jinglong occupied, after the guests were chilling, some did not talk. She asked the matter casually. Lu Jinglong said that before going south, he met with the old predecessor, and talked very happy, just want him. After Lu Jinglong's return to the north, he returned to the Taiji Jianzong retreat with peace of mind and no need to run a mountain. Chen Ping's place to visit, there are not many bones on the ground, and the heart slams in silence, then squats on the ground, gently licking the hand bones, still the same as the secular bones. No sacral beaches are stained by the yin, the corpse appears a white vision. The same is true of the former mountain. This means that the local monk, who had almost no real people before his death, had at least not become a celestial being, and there was a quirky gazebo on the stone table, and the two sides of the game clearly showed that the ranks of the robe were excellent. After being stripped by the Yellow Master, Chen Pingon discovered that the two bodies were still without the golden dragon of Jinziyi. Wherever Chen Ping went, the winding path was quiet, still aura, and there was no sense of discomfort. So Chen Pingon wasted another yang light symbol. Chen Ping's harvest was awkward. There were only a few cracked mountain artifacts. It should be done with Sun Dao Chang. Came to a dry pond, the dead leaves are defeated. It seems that if the water is full, it should be a place of spring. Chen Pingon has been thinking about the writings at the entrance to the cavern. The person who keeps the words must be a person who has entered the site of this fairyland. Either the hidden world is leaving clues for future generations, or it can only be afraid that the fish is too stupid, even the bait cannot bite, cannot be hooked. Chen Pingon turned over the railing and jumped into the pond. The dead leaves were broken and there was no mystery. After the mountain's water transport aura, it is still the thickest near the green bamboo. Luoshan is missing a good bamboo. If you can be like the ancestors of the eternal cherished by Wei Wei in the past, the year after year, the branches and leaves are scattered, the bamboo whip is stretched under the ground, the son of the sun, the son of the grandson, you can have a new one. Maolin Xiuzhu came. Of course, in the eyes of Chen Ping, there is nothing missing in Luoshan. Chen Pingon slightly smashed the soil and quickly turned it into crumbs at the fingertips. Regarding the northern part of Luzhou, the peace of mind, Chen Pingon knows not much. It's just that there are more insiders in the world, the rise and fall of the temple's incense, and the historical changes. I only heard that Wei Wei mentioned that there was an east-west rush to the sea, and there were 30,000 miles in the east. Whenever the mountains and rivers meet, there will be a sage and a sage. There is also a drowning water in the Fuzhou Island. It was broken by a large water with only the river suffix, and it took a big break into the sea. From then on, the whole big raft was broken. In just 300 years, a big cockroach disappeared. This means that all the water gods and Hibo of that big scorpion will dissipate in the golden body, and the ceremonial rules of the sacred monks along the way are extremely complicated, far more than a landscape in the ruling territory of the dynasty monarch. It is necessary to submit documents to the Confucian school of Middle-earth. Chen Ping looked around and didn't move. He took off his sword and took a sip. He sighed and sighed all the water in the sword. Then he was soaked in thoughts and thoughts like a mustard. I saw that the water gate was wide open, but it was not closed. At the foot of Chen Ping's foot, there is a green river. From the hundreds of miles, a line of water gradually gathers and becomes a stream, which slowly flows into the pond of Shuifu. The busy green children, they did not look at one of the biggest heroes who came to visit, and flew one by one, and they were elated. This picture shows that Chen Ping is somewhat sad, and he is so proud of himself. The little guy estimates that he is really scared. Chen Pingan went to the mountain to look at it. In fact, there is a more slender stream in the water house. It flows to the key acupoint where the mountain is located. This water is trapped in the water house because of the essence of water transport. It will be clear and colorless, and there will be no sorrowful green color. These thick and watery auras will begin to seep into the ground after the mountain where the mountains are located, such as the rain infiltrating the earth. When Chen Ping pondered, he quit his heart and no longer stayed in this treasure-free house. With the road and footsteps of Qin Daoyu, he ran all the way and sneaked to the tree. It is very likely that it was from Qingshan Mountain. The green bamboo, the palm of the hand holding the bamboo pole, gently shocked, the green bamboo then gently shakes up, and then holds the sword, and the sleeves will condense the leaves of the remaining half of the bamboo leaves, all of which are included in the sword. Chen Pingan is quite content. It really is a flawed expert. Then Chen Pingan did not raise the sword and began to climb the bamboo. He just didn't think that the slender bamboo branches that could be cut off by the children could not be easily folded. Chen Ping looked at the palace in the distance. The yellow master stood on a wall and had been looking at it for a long time. Chen Ping, who was, after knowing, grinned and waved. Huang Shi stepped out and fell back to the ground. It's a poor pity that wants money to be crazy, but has no way to make money. Without the spy of the yellow master, Chen Ping tried to bend the bamboo branches and took off the bamboo leaves. With his current cultivation, he could barely do it. He took one after another and stuffed it into one. Among the slanting shackles, the hard stalks rely on the bamboo leaves to hold the dry wraps to the bulging sack. I changed to a place where I continued to look at the Wufu Huangshi, who was in the distance. The person who was in the distance was obsessed with it. If this kind of person is a legendary high-profile person, his yellow master will put his neck toward Di Yuan Feng, put a knife on it. When the Huangshi really left, Chen Pingan began to put his fingers together, lightning shots, cutting high and low bamboo branches, and quickly earning income. Among the squares and squats, the green glazed tiles and the large blocks of bricks can't be really loaded, just use these slender bamboo branches to fill those gaps. After you've done it, you're a good person and a square. This is a veritable full of life. Chen Pingan holds the green bamboo and stays there. He has not slipped to the ground for a long time. I vaguely remembered the time when I was young and climbed the tree with two people. One is the most good friend who is accustomed to protecting him, and the other is half of his loved ones who are used to protecting him. At that time, it seems that the days are too poor, but every year, month, year and year, no worries. Chen Ping sighed. Take back your thoughts. Soon after, there was a voice in the distance, Chen brother. Why? Chen Pingon turned his head and looked at it. Haha smiled, the upper side is cool and the scenery is good. It is the Dun seal of the pseudonym Qin Juyuan, whose face is slightly white, and it should be a minor injury. Juyuan, giant python. Isn't it the best mountain monkey under the sun? So the name is a bit languid. Di Yuanfeng no longer looked at the old man in the black robe who was in the water. He looked at the nearest palace building and asked, how is Sun Daochang and Huang brothers harvested? Chen Pingon laughed and said, oh, all are good. Di Yuanfeng couldn't help but squint at the old guy who was holding the bamboo. The two parcels that were staggered and squatted, not the tiles or the bricks. How, the old man, are you anxious to go home to build a housewife? Unfortunately, Chen Pingon can't guess the voice of this person. Otherwise, I really want to give a thumbs up from the heart, and sincerely admire the true God. The old real man has already returned with full load, and one piece of the symbol is already full. On the cloud, the city's dragon gates were old and full of content, and they were almost satisfied. They carried a large bag and held two parcels in their hands, which could not cover their faces. After the two old men met, they stood on the top floor of a loft and overlooked the battle of the mountain gate. The old offering smiled and said, a good dog bites a dog. Xiaoyun smiled and said nothing. On the road of practice, it is often a slow step and slow pace. The two rumored disciples of Shinjinza, if they did not have their own way of guarding, first entered this place, and once they were late in biting, they were crossing the bridge. Just the same can only be beaten under the risk. Only the eyes of Jinyun were unique, and they suddenly saw the clues of the two monks of the Kaik house. Most of them were the fairy's sons and grandsons, and they were martial arts with the masters. As for the young woman who is in the air and holding the guqin of the sages, and the weather, it is obvious that it is the snow piano. However, this piano was the original life of a water dragon sect of the Shuilongzong. Once there was an earth-shattering killing, with the guqin and the locality, it was actually a breath of a fellow old Yuaning. In today's Shui Longzong Jin Dan female repairs, she played the unique magical power of the guqin. The old offering whispered softly, then we are going around the road to the algae well, quietly leaving? Or go to the back hill to take a look? Xiaoyun smiled and said, we are guardians, let the two children make decisions. We only need to hide the body shape, do not take the initiative to drown, this trip should be worry-free. The clouds smashed the sky and the sky was moving down. It was the border of this small world. What the white scorpion perceives, the old real person has certainly confirmed it earlier. Just at the entrance to the algae well, he secretly buried a hidden symbol under the ground. As long as there is no difference in the symbol, it means that the retreat is still there. Moreover, although the mysteriousness of this place is heavy, the meteorology does not seem to be filthy and evil, and there is no trace of suffocation. This makes the old real people feel relieved. Landscapes, mountains and rivers are the most difficult to fake. Let you be the Yamazawa big demon of Yuaning Jing, create a fairyland secret of a flower cluster, and fall in the eyes of Jingyun, who is skilled in fushi, can still find clues and detect early. The road to the world of Hauran, in fact, many factions in the early days, is a great scene of flowers. It's just that many of today's huge sidelines are already fragrant, not climate, or simply lost. For example, once the most prosperous Songtadeo Jianxian Xianmai, it is a real big weather. At that time, the Beiju Luzhou, even if the sword is repaired like a cloud, the sword fairy is standing, can still say that he occupies the world. Minute. In the early years of the mountain, the four great stalks of ghosts, Taoist sword fairy will occupy a place, and sword repair, sickle people and said that the world, there was no teacher knife room, Taoism swordsmanship, never repaired by sword. After seeing the change of the door, Jinyun looked at the flesh and blood of the foot of the mountain and was stunned. In the eyes of the old real people, the chances of fighting for the life of the mountain gate should be the younger generation, the age of the child. The old real person did not come to think of a poet, Xing Xian, who had said that he was in the eyes of a young man. Later poets read this sentence. They have a note: rugged is the anti-sense of the scorpion, so this language breaks the human feelings, the rugged path of the human heart, far from the steep roads of mountains and deep miles. Jin Yun remembered the greed and murder of his own, and he was helpless. In the eyes of the three saints, who is not the boy in their eyes? Jin Yun suddenly said, "You go to protect them to the next generation to find opportunities." The old man went to the foot of the mountain to persuade the shelf. A few deaths are a few. The old offerings are stopped. After thinking about it, after weighing the balance, I also understood that the old real person had a good intention and nodded. Unless the people on the cloud go to the city to leave quickly, or when the mess at the foot of the mountain, especially if the accidental death of the Shuolongzong rumor, the wrath of the thunder of the 5 dragons on the Shuolongzong will fall from the sky. Biting country and Fufu state. Kaik house, Yun Shangqing, one can't run. Perhaps whoever benefits more today will bear more. In addition, if the old real person can help the two sides who are in a stalemate to make a solution, let the two sides sit down and discuss a decent plan. This is the incense that Jin Yun has earned. Shuolongzong, Kaik house, biting Guhufu will recognize it. Jin Yun handed out a plaque and handed it to the old man who was on the cloud. He smiled and said, "If there is trouble, I will rush to the plaque." The old door of the long men was enshrined, and it disappeared. The mood of Jin Yun is actually not easy. This is to get rid of the paste. When you are a good gentleman, don't be fooled into it. It becomes a boring crowbar on both sides. After the clouds came out and shot. Don't help on both sides, and both sides help, and they are all in one, and they try to stop the two groups from continuing to kill. At the same time, moving with emotion, knowing the truth, said that there are many opportunities on the mountain. If it is still trustworthy, he can climb the treasure hunt together. Why bother to kill here? Both lose. The original chaos situation was like a river, and it was diverted into a big lake, so it quickly became calm. In particular, Jin Yun shouted 5 people and secretly negotiated. Among them are Biting Guoshao Haoyi Zhan Qing, Kaikfu Sun Qing, Shuelong Zongbai, and many of the most powerful 2 leading figures in Yamazawa. In this way, they negotiated a charter that took a step back on both sides of the arch bridge. Of course, Zhan Qing and Baiyu relegated more here. The reason is very simple. As long as they are killed all the way, they can live to the last, perhaps only forced to choose the distant Jindan white dragonfly. Of course, on the other side, it is also destined to live no more than a few, up to 10, bad luck, maybe only one hand. Therefore, the emergence of Jin Yun is a great news for both parties. Otherwise, everyone is in a difficult situation to ride the tiger, only to smash the other's head to stop. At the same time, under the leadership of Jin Yun, there is a rough agreement on the compensation for the war dead. Under the secret conversation between Jin Yun and Xinyu, Bai Yun even took out a fairy money on the spot and gave it to the other 3 people to let them negotiate the distribution of the pension. There were 5 people in Baiyu and Zhan Qing who died in a Hofu family. Jailing was also seriously injured. The Du of the Du was already on the verge of collapse, and the other imperial concubine was not much better. Zhan Qing himself is not able to find the secret fan that has no refining for the life. The knows whether it is falling into the river, or is it secretly collected by a black heart. The little white prince dressed in a white cloak, the robes have been ruined, and there is no more temperament. However, the family lost a 7-faced Wufu who was a mainstay on the table. Zhan Qing did not scream at the slightest point of the day, but he always looked as usual, and said nothing. He handed over all the powers to the day. This makes Bai Hao very happy. In the meantime, Sun Qing took the initiative and strangled the white-sounding words of the inferior. This place belongs to me. I am willing to help you to find the elders of Shuolongzong, and try not to let the Cloud City ventilate to other sections. However, if Yunshangchang Shinjinzi took the lead with other big monks, don't blame us for the monks who left the house. In this sentence, I was so impressed by the white. In the past, the two sides had their own efforts to kill themselves. I am afraid that it is difficult for outsiders to see except the old real people. Therefore, after they have formally made a verbal covenant, Bai Yu has the idea of establishing some personal friendship with Kaik House in the future. When Jin Yun saw the two sides roughly negotiated, he was relieved. It's good to be good, but it's hard to be good. It's not only the realm of people who persuade them is so simple, but the clever grasp of people's hearts is the key. On the top of the mountain road, a tall old man emerged out of thin air. He glanced at the ruins of the Taoist ruins that piled up into the mountains. He shook his head and slowly walked over the steps. He smiled and said, "The children thought that this was all done. There is such a good under the sun. Do you get the money? People kill the most, and people make it happen. Otherwise, see your children playing, what is the fun?" He rubbed his foot gently. When I walked over the steps, the two sides of the armistice overlooking the foot of the mountain, after a glance, they were instantly smashed by the sword. It's just the green river in the foot of the mountain. It's already a vista, and it's smashing first, then it starts to boil. Jin Yun was the first person to perceive a vision. The double sleeves were swaying, and a piece of Zhang Fu was flying like water. Only in an instant, the river under the bridge will remain silent. Then, on both sides of the Baiyu Arch Bridge, one of the tall, 5-footed Xingyi gods, one of the gods holding a silver pike, a holding a shovel, each landing, and then standing. At the same time, the white jade arch bridge was also clouded, eventually condensing a white goddess, her golden eyes, faceless expression, holding a picture shaft like a tabo. She floated off the air and spread the scroll axis. The voice was like a scorpion, and she spoke slowly. It was a well-informed old real person, Yun Yun. After listening to the words of the white goddess, they felt ridiculous, but they had to be convinced. The general meaning is that this place is the ancient real person, the place where the testimony has soared, once ranked the 36th whole day, and the 71 blessed land. It is a clean situation. They are guilty of sin and sin. Before the real person soared, he left a law to give them 3, and promised the later monks, relying on the number of treasures, to determine the size of the opportunity, will eventually leave 5 people, not only can leave all the celestial treasures in their hands the secret of the fairy tales, for the first person, can obtain the rumored identity of the flying real person, and the rest are temporarily registered, and another direct teaching of the immortal. In the next 10 days, only 5 people will survive in the end. Otherwise, everything will be void. All the opportunities will be said. They will also be reduced to the robbery. They will die on the spot. As a rumor and a registered disciple, if they are unable to clean up the teacher. This is not worthy of getting this edge. The scroll after the spread suddenly became as big as a waterfall, falling from the sky to the ground. There are 5 people hanging on the painting. It is the 5 people who have the most treasures and the strongest blessings. In addition to this water curtain, somewhere on the mountain, somewhere behind the mountain, as long as there is someone, there is a little water curtain hanging in the air. The words of the white goddess are not loud, but they are resounding in the heavens and the earth. Everyone is heard in the secret world. The young man who carried the white jade pen tube of Yun Shangzi, who was on the cloud, was stunned. He was on the list, and his ranking was not low, ranking 2nd. The woman monk on the side was mixed. The bottom of the person is a young son of a saber. Di Yuan Feng. This handsome white man with a pale face is stunned. In the fourth place, it is a scorpion man standing in front of the Gongwan stone monument, arms folded around his chest and eyes. The third person is a tall and thin man carrying a robe like a robe. It is the Sun Tao who claims to be the home of Raytheon. At this time, the tall and thin people have been sweating. First person. It is a black-robe old man who is holding a bamboo hanging from the ground. Chen Pin gone. Everyone saw the picture above. The guy still didn't want to land. He stretched out his hand and scratched his head. Then he looked at the landscape painting hovering in the air. He said with sincerity, "Look, make a mistake, really wrong." Sort of Coming Chapter 934. The top of Baiyue Pian Mountain. The ancient pine is towering, and there is a man in Panasonic. Wearing a snow-white robe, stepping on a cloud shoe, tied a ribbon on his waist, and a gold ring around his ear. God, fairy, ghost, beautiful and picturesque. It is rumored that the 5 mountain monarchs of Aquarius Island have their own romantic affairs. Zhongyue Jinqing is the oldest and very ancient. Fan Junmao, the female mountain monarch of Nanyue, is the most heroic. The monarch of Dongyue Mountain is immortal, and the monarch of Xia Mountain is more chivalrous. Weibo of Baiyue, among the 5 mountain monarchs on a continent, is recognized as the best in appearance, so he is the most energetic. According to a certain high-powered little herbation from Luopa Mountain, the only people in Baiyue's realm who are looking forward to hosting a night banquet are those immortal children who have genealogical identities. At the banquet, they just look at Wei Shanjun, who is drunk and blushing slightly, and they will be drunk even if they don't drink. Upon hearing this, Chen Pingan was about to fight against Wei Shanjun, so he asked the millet grains, who was the gossip. The millet grains are said to be Bai Xian, but Bai Xian seems to have heard it from Jing Qing. Moreover, Jing Qing once slapped Bai Xian, and must attend the next night banquet to suppress Wei Bo's limelight, lest our Wei Shanjun raises his tail and becomes too swollen. At this moment, Wei Bo opened a pair of pure golden eyes, sat up, smiled and said, "Where is Xiaomo?" Nice to ask. Chen Ping angrily smiled and said, "I advise you to avoid Xiaomo's idea." Wei Bo smiled and said, "Do you know my mood now? With the idea of persuading you to avoid hitting my few bamboos in the Luopa Mountain. Wasn't the millet grains in those days instigated to come to me often to count bamboos?" Standing beside Chen Pingan, Qing Tong looked at the majestic mountain monarch through the power fence gauze. He only said that the matter of going to a banquet next night today has almost become synonymous with Weibo in the Pian Mountain. It is said that the great mountain monarch of one continent was once the remnant of the Shinshui kingdom of the ancient Shu land boundary, and was relegated to the lord of the land. For some reason, he was favored by the state teacher Cui Yun and was promoted to the mountain monarch of the Dai dynasty. The ups and downs of this Junjun encounter are breathtaking. Today, Aquarius Island and Beiju Luzhou, both the north and the south, are well known. Fayan Mountain and Luopa Mountain are good allies who wear a pair of trousers. But it is interesting to say that the young mountain owner in front of him set foot on Pian Mountain for the first time in his life. When he was an apprentice as a young kiln worker, he waited until Weibo entered the mountain and served as the king of Baiyue Mountain, and Chen Pingan also became the owner of Luopa Mountain. Only after that, most of Weibo went to Luopa Mountain as a guest, and Chen Pingan never took the initiative to climb Pian Mountain. It wasn't until Chen Pingan traveled through the wild world last time and returned to his hometown that he took Xiao Mo to climb the mountain together. The gift of meeting was so rich that Weibo would look forward to seeing him next time. Chen Pingan smiled and said, "I won't talk nonsense with you." After Weibo learned of Chen Ping's intentions in this dream, he nodded without hesitation and agreed, but couldn't help but sigh. "I knew that you had snatched the abundant water transport from the Luluo River. I thought you would retreat. For a period of time, if you are lucky, if you stay for hundreds of years, maybe you will have the opportunity in the future to help you fight for the seat of the world's water law number 1. I don't even have merit. The 5 thunder rectification methods of Longhushan Tianshifu, the fire method of Hulongjinren, and the native method of Ias Haotian, all can be said to have reached the highest level. It was the reminder from Weibo for the first time that Qin Pingan really realized that his avenue was hydrophilic. Weibo said, the 2 mountains of Beipingzu, the east and the west, may not be willing to nod. If you don't make up 1 continent and 5 sacred mountains, it will eventually be a dish of loose sand, and the effect of mountain incense will be greatly reduced. When dealing with the gods of the mountains and rivers, the difficulty lies in the fact that the great advantage is not the way. The hustle and bustle on the road below the mountain is a benefit, but the Shinto on the mountain is not. Just like Weibo was willing to agree to this matter, how could he just covet that merit? Once his desires were sour, it would be a problem to say that Weibo's mountain monarch was not golden. After all, there is a major premise here. The gods of all walks of life who ignite a stick of incense still need to sincerely recognize Qin Pingan himself. Therefore, Qin Pingan is the most crucial man who delivers incense with mountains and rivers. Qin Pingan nodded and smiled. I'm mentally prepared to eat closed doors, so I will come to you first to ask for a good sign of a good start. Weibo said, would you like me to say hello to those 2 bureaucrats? Qin Pingan shook his head and said, forget it, there is no big difference whether you have that letter or not. Weibo nodded. It is true. The 5 sacred mountains are of the same rank and rank. No one can control who. Besides, Weibo has no strong friendship with the 2 sacred mountain monarchs, and there is no personal friendship between them. Correspondence is nothing more than an official business. Qin Pingan asked, has Yi Qingzhu changed her mind? Did you visit your Shanjun mansion today and voluntarily request to withdraw the official document of her resignation from the Yuye River god of water? Weibo shook her head and said, you are wrong. On the contrary, Yi Qingzhu did rush to Piyun Mountain, but she didn't cry and quarrel with me and hang herself. She became more and more determined in her previous intentions. Relocating to another place, do not expect to be flat, can be degraded and appointed. She has photographed a few rivers, the only thing in common is that she is far away from the Luopa mountain. She is also angry with me, saying that if Beiyue is not allowed to do this, she am going to the capital to file a court case. My eyes are red when I speak, and tears are shining, so pitiful. Qin Pingan rubbed his chin, I can't. I was at the Yuye River Water Mansion, and I had a good chat with the God of Water Empress, and I was honest about it. Weibo smiled and said, even if she can believe your words, she believes more in her instincts. Qin Pingan was silent. Weibo restrained his smile and said with a serious face, this means that you have to be careful of your Taoism in your future retreat. The image of the stateholder and the person in the mirror is actually a small thing. Qin Pingan nodded and said, I will pay attention. This is a friend of mine. Weibo took out something from his sleeve and handed it to Qin Pingan. This is a gift to celebrate the next sect. Take it. Qin Pingan glanced at the gift, can I have a face? It turned out that the 2 semi-celestial soldiers sent by Xiao Mo earlier, among them the Huang Yue that can suppress water transport, was used by our Lord Wei Dashan to be generous. At this moment it was the sword box presented by Wu Yi, and it stayed on Xiao Mo's side, otherwise Qin Pingan would take it out and ask Wei Dashanjin how ashamed. Weibo smiled and squinted, and asked tentatively, forget it then. Qin Pingan waved his hand and looked at Wei Shanjun, who was insincere, and the pocket jade that disappeared in his sleeves. Using the mantra of Pei Qian's back then, it was a pain in his brain. Weibo looked at a monk wearing a green robes. Since he couldn't see the depth of Taoism, at least he had started in the fairyland, and asked, what is this Taoist friend? Chen Pingon didn't bother to use his heartfelt words, and said, "The Taoist name is Qing Tong, the owner of the town's demon building in Tonggishao, is adjacent to the Taoist temple of Donghaiguan, and his true body is a phoenix tree." This time he dreamed of traveling to the 3 continents. "The young fellow Daoist has helped a lot, so I don't know if you don't fight." Qing Tong sighed faintly, and just told his own details. The hidden officer didn't talk about the morals of the rivers and lakes and the taboos of the landscape. "This gentleman is very charming, but after closer inspection, Qing Tong feels that he is still inferior to the noble son Zhu Lian of the lotus flower-blessed land." Wei Bo bowed his head and bowed his hands in a salute. He was quite polite, and said with a gentle voice, "Wei Bo in Piyun Mountain is fortunate to have met the seniors of the same youth." Qing Tong took off the power fence above his head, and after saluting, he smiled and said, "Qing Tong has seen Jun Wei Shan." Wei Bo smiled and said, "Senior Qing Tong, it is easy to get on and off the thief boat. From now on, we will be regarded as difficult brothers and hard brothers." Qing Tong smiles far-fetched. After holding his hands, someone climbed high and looked into the distance, busy admiring the scenery, and said with a smile, "Talking shallow and deep is a big taboo, Wei Shanjun stays a little longer." Qing Tong was a little envious of the friendship between the two, one and one immortal, complementing each other. It is no wonder that Piyun Mountain has been prospering over the years, and it has become the first of the 5 sacred mountains. Chen Pingon also talked about the rise of Xiaoyuan's deity in Baihu River and the relocation of Taidian Gaonyang to the temple to Yunzhou. In fact, the only difficulty is that Wuxi, located in the territory of Yunzhou in Huangting State, is more unusual. After all, there is a dragon palace site hidden. Such a mountainous and abundant land belongs to the rare fertility in the officialdom of Shanshui, and Wuxi, the Shimei River, one of the water sources, has never been a water in the history of Huangtinghua, not even the river Pohibo. To put it simply, when the Dragon Palace site is opened, water transport will naturally overflow, then leveling to the Shimei River, where water transport has skyrocketed, as the first river is a kind of promotion. In addition, as long as the river properly managed, it is easy to get an excellent test in the Shanshui evaluation of Lily Department and Shanjun Mansion. Wei Bo thought for a moment and said, "I'll run it. You just let Xiao Luan and Gao Nyang wait for the news." The letter can be more blunt. They can now prepare for the raising and gilding of the golden statue in the temple. Chen Pingon asked, "I really don't need me to say hello to the Dali court. For the title of water god of Zimehi River, no accident, there must be a few candidates for the Dali court." Just like back then, in order to fight for the position of the Iron Talisman River god of water, the few Shangzhou kingdom surnames in Dali did not fight secretly. Wei Bo shook his head and said, "The rank of the Thin Eyebrow River is not too high, and it is in the hinterland of Beiyue, not a few steps away from Piyun Mountain, so I can make a decision in one word." Chen Pingon said, "When you look back, remember to hit Gao Nyang, so that he won't forget about his sudden wealth, or bring the habits of Xiang Mansion to Yunzhou." Gao Nyang stepped down from the Jixiang Temple on the Tianjin River and moved to the Shimei River. After that, he attracted the incense of the jurisdiction and gathered the mountains and waters. Chen Pingon was not worried about getting along with the local city gods and Wenwu temples. Because this old river is very good at being a man, but Gao Nyo is too familiar with the way of life, for a water god, after all, it is far from enough. Wei Bo laughed and said, "I don't have a good gentleman in Shanjun Mansion." Afterwards, we chatted for a few more words. When Wei Bo saw Chen Pingon, he was about to leave. He really left after in his trousers. Qing Tong feels complicated. After this trip, he has become more envious of the monarch Weibo and the great dukes like Yang Hua and Chao Yong, each of whom is in charge of such a large landscape site. The key is the excitement. If there are a few able-bodied staff members who are skilled in general affairs, wouldn't they be able to be as leisurely as when they first met Wei Bo? Wei Bo called to Chen Pingan and smiled and said an anecdote. Your second guardian of the Luopa Mountain, Daoist Chief Xian Wei, has not been idle for a while. At this moment, he has secretly collected an anonymous disciple. Young casual cultivator, because this person admires the hermit, even if he knows that you will not collect any disciples in 30 years, he still rents a house in the small town. It seems that he intends to live for a long time. Cha Wu went to the mountain gate and wandered around. Seeing that he was eager to ask for the truth, Daoist Xianwei was eager to cherish his talents. Chao Qingqing, Yuan Lai, and Millet used to watch the door at the gate of the mountain one after another, but they were all part-time jobs. Chen Pingan heard loudly for a while. Previously, through the Shanshui mansion on the Piyin Mountain, I helped Luopa to declare something to the outside world. Within 30 years, the Luopa Mountain was shaped like a mountain, and it would neither receive outsiders nor collect disciples. Regarding this matter, Chen Pingan just opened a very small opening to allow the members of the Ji Sifeng genealogy to collect direct disciples in private. Xian Wei took advantage of it without thinking about it. Chen Pingan reluctantly said, "What is the prose character?" Wei Bo said, "Tough heart, average aptitude, Jiazi years, or Dongfu realm, not Jianxiu. I checked his roots and feet, and his life is innocent. He is from the old Qianzhou of the Hoarfrost dynasty." Yisan catechumen, once a small Taoist temple in Qianzhou, said that the Taoist temple was destroyed in the war. After the war, he repaired it as new with his own power, and then began to wander northward until he saw the seal. After the report, I wanted to come to Luopa to settle down and practice, but he was not the kind of opportunist. I didn't want to use Luopa as a shortcut to win fame, but simply felt that our young hermit in Aquarius was unique in the world. The hero of China wants to consult with Master Qin Shan, who is in the realm of swordsmanship, boxing, learning, and talisman. Chen Pingan remembered the scene of his first meeting with Xianwei in Dali capital. Even if Xianwei's other identity was aside, even an old river like himself was almost shocked by the other party's nonsense, and he was relieved for a while. There was grief, nodded and said, "I am not a Qing white man, and I will not be deceived by Xianwei King." Chen Pingan asked with a smile, "Listen to it, do you want me to acquiesce in this matter?" Wei Bo replied, "This Taoist priest seems to have Su Hui, named Lin Feijing." The reason why Chen Pingan went through the house and did not enter was that the so-called cowardice of being close to hometown was just an excuse. The real reason was that he did not want Qing Tong to see the new janitor of Daohao Xianwei too early. It was just that after arriving at Piyin Mountain, Chen Pingan changed his mind instead, and did not stop Qing Tong from looking at Kawopo Mountain, so he waited until Qing Tong saw the Taoist immortal Wei at the gate of the mountain. Qing Tong was more shocked than seeing the old master who imitated Bai Yujing. I saw that at the foot of the Luopa Mountain, there was a hairpin on the head of someone. At the same moment, Qing's face was pale and colorless, silently raised his hand, and reworn the power fence to cover his face. Is this the true foundation of Luopa Mountain? The first Taoist in the world. One of the top 10 in the ancient world. At the gate of Zhongyue Mountain. The verdant color of the mountain is from top to bottom, pouring all the way to the foot of the mountain like flowing water. At this moment, Qing Tong's Daoist heart has gradually returned to calm, and he teased in his heart, "No wonder this mountain monarch has a blue character in his name." Chen Pingan reminded, "Jin Shan is not a joke, you will listen more and talk less later." In a hidden dojo near the mountain temple, I saw the Zhongyue Mountain Jun Jinqing who opened the door to welcome guests. Chen Pingan opened the door and said, "On the side of Xiandu Mountain of Xiaozong, two anonymous worshippers, Xiaopa the Immortal and the maid Meng Long, they are about to establish a country on the border of the Rin River in the middle of Tonggishao." His eldest daughter, Wu Yi, the founder of Xiang Mansion, will have an identity similar to that of a true protector of the country. Since I am a matchmaker in this matter, I will definitely not be the shopkeeper." Not surprisingly, the mountain prince once again faced the south and bowed his head. Jin Qing smiled and said, "I don't know anything." Chen Pingan nodded and said, "I didn't say anything." The most excellent method of refining characters, of course, is based on those or records, or seal inscriptions on special materials. The kind of dharma is not lightly transmitted. Taoist golden rules, green chapters, and handwritten scripts of Confucian sages, Buddhist dragon elephants. The scriptures copied and annotated by the Taoist monks are just these words, which cannot be found, and once they are refined, they are a kind of damage to the great road and irreparable. It is equivalent to a source of water. Once Chen Pingan refines it, it will become fragments, which will produce a series of immeasurable movements and dispersal of qi, and even lead to future qi practitioners who practice this very formula. The words in the heart tend to be blurred and cannot really prove the truth, just like a common master. When he flips through a book, he occasionally finds that he does not recognize a certain word. The text of this rubbing is just somewhere in between. Before that, Chen Pingan was on the Killalong side and borrowed 300,000 words, with a group of old and new books on both sides of the Qiantang River. It really just won by quantity. There are many repetitions in the text of a poem, but this type of repetition can also be refined into one character, just like the iron. The more tenacious, the greater the density, so the more the overlap, the more weight the text. Among them, the rhyme of Taoism is more important. As for the sword box sent by Wu Yi, which secretly carried the more than 60 words of the treasure urn, it belonged to the first situation of can be met but cannot be sought. Chen Pingan said, "In this way, Zhongyue Dao Qi will inevitably be compromised." Jin Qing sneered, "Then you pay me back." This mountain monarch just didn't say a word. "If you get cheap here, you still sell well." Chen Pingan promised, "Besides trading, I will repay Zhongyue when I vacate my hands in the future." Jin Qing said half-truth and half-truth, "In the future." "Why in the future? Master Hermit can serve as Zongyia's honorable guest officer today." As long as I nod my head, I immediately asked the Department of Etiquette to send out a beautifully worded landscape report. Chen Pingan shook his head and declined the matter. He really wanted to agree to be the guest of Zhongyue, but Wei Shanjun must not jump and scold others. From beginning to end, Jin Qing did not ask who the monk next to Chen Ping was. Chen Pingan asked with a smile, "That Huangshan Jianzong hasn't held the opening ceremony yet?" Jin Qing said, "Xingyang Mountain has been scared by you. Wherever you dare to mention something next sect, I found myself a step down, changed the word zong to faction early, and named it Huangshanjian. Pi, looking at the posture, I completely give up, and I don't think there is any chance to create the next clan." As for the date of the celebration, it was set in the spring of next year at the beginning. Pick a lucky day. According to the current situation, it will be the end of next year at the earliest. Not to mention Chen Pingan and Lu Xianyang, who were jointly questioning the sword, only the sword fairy Miu, and the female grandmaster Pei Qian, who were both found out in their identities, were two mountains that could not be crossed by the monks of Mount Jingyang. At the foot of Jingyang Mountain, which was temporarily named Huangshan Sword Sect by Emperor Bamboo, Jianxiu Yuanbai, one of the double bai of the old Zhuang dynasty, finally did not break away from Jingyang Mountain's genealogy and did not serve as Zhongyue Gesh Qing. She just returned to her homeland and served as the first head of the Huangzhou Sword Sect, and the Qingyufeng female cultivator Ni Yuerong, who has jumped several levels in a row, was promoted directly from the treasurer of Guyunle to the downhill of Jingyang Mountain. God of Wealth. Chen Pingan said, "I'm still self-righteous. It's okay, when good things come, I'll be a little bit more happy." At the beginning, Jingyang Mountain felt that the next sect would be something in the bag, and became the first sect in the history of Aquarius to have the next sect, with a great momentum of "let me and others." Now I feel that the next incident is destined to be a literal mirror image, but I don't know that the Dei court has arranged for the Huangshan sword sect. Even if Xingyang Mountain and the Mountain Lord Bamboo Emperor do nothing, they are still destined to be promoted. It is the first martial art of Zhongzi. Jin Qing smiled and said, "Is this the road to heaven?" Nowadays, the entire Aquarius Mountain and Shanshui officialdom are particularly fond of watching the jokes of Xingyang Mountain. And the unintentional words of Shanjun Zhongyue are actually very chewy on Qingtong's side, and the aftertaste is endless. Chen Pingan smiled and did not comment, but just asked, after becoming the sword sect of Huangshan Mountain, following the old rules of the Confucian Temple, there must be a monk from the upper 5 realms as the suzerain, so Yuanbai can't be the suzerain. What will happen then? Is to return again Xingyang Mountain, or come to Jin Shanjun to be a guest Qing? Jin Qing said, "It still depends on Yuanbai's own intentions. Going to Xingyang Mountain means that you are old-aged. From time to time, you have to be negotiated by the patriarch Hall. With Yuanbai's temper, he has already repented once, so he is unlikely to come to my mountain. Since the monarch's palace has practiced, most of them will choose to stay in the next sect." Chen Pingan said sincerely in his eyes, then bothered Jin Shanjun and Yuanbai to say hello. "Tongyi's his first kendo sect, Xiandushan Qingping Jianzong, look forward to it, waiting for your ride." Jin Qing laughed loudly and said, "Dare you dig the foot of the wall?" Compared with the last time Qingtong was led by the nose, Chen Pingan and Qingtong made it clear about where to see who was going to meet in the mountains this time. Wearing a blue shirt is like dancing in the void, surrounded by a dreamlike glazed glaze, is a wonderful view that can only be found when wading in the long river of time. Chen Pingan calmly said, "The boat goes to Quoto Road to look for the mountains, and take a step to see what else can be done." Qingtong asked, "Don't you feel aggrieved at all?" Chen Pingan couldn't help being amused by this question, and gently rubbed his face with both hands. "Qingtong, you have been on the top of the mountain for too long, except for the thought of Jianshou, which will make you feel useless. If you are willing, I can help to say hello to the Confucian Temple and allow you to travel across continents. I don't have the skills, but let you leave the town's demon building and travel anywhere on the continent. I'm still a little sure of. If I had this idea, I wouldn't tell the Confucian Temple myself. I have a friend who said that people should not be led away by face. Furthermore, don't think that the most sacred master has once been in the demon tower of the guest town, you can really do it. The Shanshui officialdom is also a public practice. There are many rules and different ways. The county official is not as good as the current one. It is the same. You can't fake the imperial edict and talk nonsense with the Confucian Temple. Say that the Holy Master agreed to this matter. Then tell yourselves. If you don't talk about the 3 masters and deputy heads of the Zhongta Confucian Temple, Shuigong Jizhou, and Sai, you must be unfamiliar with them, and you have never seen them before. Then just talk about Tongyi's Haodafu and Tianmu. There are 3 local academies in Wuxi, plus the sages who sit in the sky. Which one do you know? So let alone make an exception for you and say good things. It is estimated that there are some ambiguities that are feasible or not. It will only be a failure. I took the initiative to speak just now. You are just a trivial matter of nodding your head along the way, but if you bypass me and be rejected by the Confucian Temple, wouldn't you lose the face? Humans, whether you practice on the mountain or discuss life under the mountain, you just want to go out and have face everywhere, but you can't just live for face. Don't take care of the firewood, rice, oil, salt, sauce, vinegar and tea at hand. Isn't this the reason why you can go down the mountain easily? Qingtong was speechless. Chen Pingan smiled and said, "At this moment, avoid the cold, you can keep up with the phrase something makes sense again." Qingtong said, "Do you like reasoning so much?" Chen Pingan smiled and said, "That's a friend you haven't met me with. By the way, he will attend the next ceremony, and he should be in Xiandu Mountain now. When I ask you to come to your house as a guest, you will treat it as a my face." Qing Tong asked, "Who?" "God knows who you will let as a guest." Chen Pingan said, "It's Lu Jinglong, the sect master of Taihui Sword Sect, a man who is good at reasoning and likes to drink. He said in advance that my friend has an invincible amount of alcohol. Is there a lot of immortal wine stored in the town's demon building?" "There are few sword repairmen in the world who don't drink," Qing Tong said. "I heard of this person. It seems that he is not high in realm now. Is he just a sword repairer in the Jade Pure realm, right?" Chen Pingan tut, "Isn't the realm high? If Lu Jinglong is a local swordsman of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, it is estimated that the eldest sword fairy will teach swordsmanship himself. Just talking about Lu Jinglong's natal flying sword, it will definitely be rated as the top of the Summer Palace, because the highest rank is only the top one. I have to admit that it has been a long time to get along with Qing Tong, the great mountain monk, and it seems to be quite easy. Let's look at the other ones, Guan Dao Guan Old Guan Zhu, Bai Di Qing Jing Zhong, Sui Chu Gong Wu Shuang Jiang. If they had the identity of a 14th level cultivator, then even the ascending level swordsman Pei Min, and the sudden rain asking about the sword, the pressure that Pei Min brought to Chen Pingan was incomparable. Regarding Lu Jinglong's visit, Qing Tong neither refused nor agreed, but just thinking of the janitor at the foot of the mountain, Qing Tong still couldn't hold back it, and his uncontrollable voice trembled slightly and asked a weird question. "Is he really him?" Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Guess." Qing Tong gritted his teeth and snorted coldly, not daring to ask questions. Jian Xiu, speaking and doing things, is really cheaper than the other. Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Why do you curse?" Qing Tong's face was gloomy. "You can already hear my heart." Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Guess again." Qing Tong was angrily, "It's enough." Chen Pingan smiled and fell silent for a moment, before asking for no reason, "Where did all the words we spoke, you said?" Probably not expecting any answers from Qing Tong. Chen Pingan asked and replied, "Could it be like a comparison of two mirrors?" Nanyue. At the time when the drizzle was hazy, the rain was continuous and the mountain roads were muddy and difficult to navigate. The female mountain monarch Fan Junmao looked around, and was actually in the pavilion where she was last time. It is said that thinking of the day leads to dreams of the night. "What's the matter?" Fan Junmao folded his hands and surrounded the blue shirt. He smiled and said, "It's good for you to dream of others by the gods of mountains and rivers. Come on, see me, what do you mean by sneaky things?" Fan Junmao glanced at Qing Tong slantingly, "This man. Is it unnecessary for her to appear here?" Fan Junmao pretended to say suddenly, "Understood, it's just that Mr. Hidden tastes a bit heavy." Chen Pingan was expressionless, "Done." Fan Junmao restrained his joking expression, stopped, sat on the bench, and asked, "The vision of the world that originated in Bai Yujing earlier is related to you, right?" Chen Pingan nodded without denying. Fan Junmao was amazed, saying that the country is easy to change and the temperament is difficult to change. This guy is really a good wealth boy. The only difference is the identity. The taxi should treat each other with admiration for 3 days. The younger brother Fan Air is always foolish. Fan Junmao leaned against the railing, leaned his legs, and placed his hands horizontally on the railing. Originally, he was tired and lazy. After hearing Chen Pingan's business experience, Fan Junmao suddenly looked vigorous. He was fair in business and made a small profit. Whoops, never thought that today is the 30th of the new year, and a good year can be had. As for the monk Meili in Bai who dared not see anyone, Fan Junmao didn't need to look straight, because she could see through the humble and inferior origin of the other party at once. After all, Fan Junmao had a more concealed origin in addition to the identity of the mountain monarch on the table. What if he is an ascended cultivator? It's just a little bigger ant. Just like Na Jigue, how can it be a real dragon? In the ancient years 10,000 years ago, it was still a long reptile. The supreme person back then found Fan Junmao, who had already opened his mind and remembered his former identity. Just because Fan Junmao said something wrong, the other party almost cut her to death with a sword, but Fan Junmao was still happy. You must know that Fan Junmao was in the ancient heavenly court, and in fact, the status was not low, and it was regarded as the existence of the second highest position. Qing Tong secretly swallowed, because she vaguely recognized the person's roots and feet. It was not Qing Tong's unique vision, but after Fan Junmao became a female mountain king, she intentionally or unconsciously restored part of her former true face, which happened to be Qing Tong once. I have seen her once from afar, and I have a deep memory. It may also be a human monk in the ascending realm, who is younger than Qing Tong, and even has a lower cultivation base and lower killing power. They look at the remnants of the gods like Fan Junmao. It will be a completely different perspective. Chen Pingon looked at Fan Junmao and smiled. This is the look in his eyes 10,000 years ago, and it will still be the same after 10,000 years. Then this life has worked so hard to temper the golden body of the gods. What is the picture? Qing Tong was on Chen Pingan's side. He was used to playing dumb riddles and destructive speech. For a while, he was moved a little bit, and he was a little uncomfortable. Fan Junmao stared at this unassuming young sword repairman. Her eyes were cold and her face was uncertain. After a while, she suddenly smiled and nodded frequently and said, "The official of the hidden official, whoever is the official has the final say." Fan Junmao made a complete cut from the previous moment, and asked with a smile, "Do you want me to call Fan Er over?" Chen Pingon seemed to be in the same situation, shaking his head and smiling, "No, I will definitely find him for a drink when I return home from Tongyi's house." Fan Junmao looked playfully, drinking flower wine. Chen Pingon nodded and said, "Two big gents, just drinking flower wine, what can be the problem? Amidst the Yingyan flowers, I am sitting in distress, isn't it more determined?" Fan Junmao obviously didn't believe it, and sneered, "Really? Leave me here and get a fat man with a swollen face." As a mountain monarch, I have heard many deeds of the second treasurer of the Great Wall of Jinqi. Chen Pingon said, "What's false about this? The sword repairman of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, who doesn't know, I, Chen Pingon, drink when I want to drink, and I will return whenever I want to return to Ningfu." Ningyao stopped once. Ever said half a sentence? Absolutely nothing. You outsiders know a shit. In fact, Chen Pingon had already honestly reported with Ning Yao about the meal that he had missed for so many years. Said that he had passed by Old Dragon City for the first time, and met with that Fan Er. In addition, he was young and ignorant. At that time, he couldn't hold back the stunner of Fan Er, and promised him to drink flower wine. Of course, the so-called flower wine, at most, is that there are women playing the piano from the side. Fan Junmao asked casually, "Have you been to the eastern and western mountains?" Needless to say, Weibo and Beiyue is a family with Chen Pingon. In addition, the Fengyuan ferry from the Xuanmi dynasty of Luopashan will dock at the Zhongyue ferry, which means that Chen Pingon and Jin Qing also hooked up. Chen Pingon nodded and said, "None." Fan Junmao gloated and said, "Shan Lord Chen is so guilty that he has the status of a hermit who can frighten people. Otherwise, with the temper of a certain mountain monarch, he must make an order on the spot." Chen Pingon smiled and said, "You gave me the status of a hidden official." Fan Junmao laughed loudly, raised his hand, and a jug appeared in his hand and shook it gently. When the two sides first saw each other, they were taking the Longdao route under the ground. The two ferry boats staggered past, and they were once played by Fan Junmao. To be precise, both sides thought that each other was a fool at the time. Chen Pingan said, "I won't drink the wine anymore, I'm going on my way soon." Fan Junmao didn't mean to keep guests, but said, "Don't give up so many merits." This move is tantamount to a little profanity. Chen Pingan shook his head and said, "Take it from the heavens and the earth, and return it to the heavens and the earth." You think it's a profanity, I think it's hadao. It's just this vocabulary that Chen Pingan said when he reached his lips, and he swallowed it back. The meaning was too big, and it was a bit unclear. Oh, if the old cook, Cui Dongshan, Pei Qian, and Jia Sheng were around, I guess they would have followed the flattery. When Chen Pingan left, Fan Junmao was still sitting in the pavilion. She showed a look of sadness, raised her head and took a sip of wine, then turned her head and looked out of the mountain. The mountains and rivers have no fixed master, and they have changed the world. The mountains and rivers are beautiful, without the old colors. Drinking 101,000 kinds of Xianjia fermented wine is full of the bitter taste of coptis. Fan Junmao threw the empty wine jug out of the pavilion and plunged into the sea of clouds. Eventually, it slammed on the ground, and there was no sound after a sound. Can it really be hard to come by? God knows. God knows. During the sleepwalking in the long river of time, Qing Tong asked, "Next is to go to Zhongtu Sui Mountain. I have long heard that the request for a visa over there is very good, and the plain noodles are delicious, and Qing Tong is looking forward to it." Chen Pingan rarely hesitated. He temporarily changed his mind and muttered to himself, "Old rules, when you arrive at the Middle-earth Shenzhou, you must have a good start." Just like in the Qingfufang, Mr. Hong's house, there is a bonsai on the table that looks like a small dojo. The little guys don't say, "Gongxi get fortune," and I don't think I have crossed the threshold. Zhongtu Shenzhou, the territory of the Daong dynasty. The two sides showed up at a mountain gate. Qing Tong looked up at the plaque, and said in doubt, "Jizengshan Pavilion?" Pavilion owner Yunyi is not a mountain god. Qing Tong only heard that during the discussion at the Confucian temple, Chen Pingan had a big fight with this immortal on Yuanyang's side, and he was about to be born and died. Could it also be the kind of no-acquaintance relationship? Chen Pingan explained, Wei Zi, the Taoist companion of Yunbei, is also an immortal. It is mainly this female cultivator who owns the broken secret realm equivalent to most of the blessed land. As long as he respects the incense and is sincere, it can be counted as a mountain incense. That's why Chen Pingan only went to his lotus root blessed land before. In fact, the Dragon Palace Xiaodongshan in Luzhou, North Ju, can also ignite a stick of water. It's a pity that Li Yuan and Shen Lin, the two great dukes, are no longer in the cave. Inside. As for the Qingtan blessed land of Aquarius god sect, Chen Pingan had no incense relationship with sacred sect and Tianjun Qijin except for knowing Han Zhoujin, who was born in the blessed land. As for the cloud cave blessed land of Yiguizhangjiang from Tonggishao, Chief Zhou is not there, so there is no need to go. Chen Pingan instantly dissipated his spiritual consciousness, and quickly shrank the mountains and rivers one step at a time, and went straight to a small xia near the water. This is the forbidden place of Jizengshan Hole. Only Yunbei and Wei Zi, a couple of gods and family members, can come here to visit and relax. The immortal Yunya happened to be dealing with the sect affairs in the water pavilion at the moment. He suddenly raised his head and looked at the two uninvited guests by the water. After seeing the face of one of them, he quickly moved his fingers together and gently pushed aside a heavy treasure. He just picked up the whisk on the table, took it with him, got up immediately, and walked out of the water pavilion quickly. Qing Tong saw the immortal of the Jiuzhan Immortal Hall, with a face like a crowned jade, white clothes surpassing snow, holding a snow-white whisk in his hand. Yunba's appearance and tolerance are all very good, but it seems to be a bit inferior to Shanjun Weibo. Chen Pingan smiled and said, "It's been a long time since I saw you." The Taoist friend Yunya still has the same demeanor. Yunyi forcefully resisted the horror in his heart and bowed, but he remained silent and didn't know how to address the other party. As for how to be dragged into this place, immortal Yunya is both strange and not strange. It is strange why the other party is willing to take the initiative to find himself. It is not surprising how the other party did this. Chen Pingan exclaimed, "Be careful and cautious, better than casual cultivators." Lu Jimao once said that in terms of mental means, those immortal genealogists, in the eyes of Shanxiexu, are young children who do nothing more. But there are a handful of immortal genealogists who talk about the degree of cruelty and the concealment of harmful methods. We Shansui Xiao knows those inside stories, and I am afraid we will be ashamed. Yunyao quickly put away the whisk that has always been used to save his life. His face was ashamed, and he whispered. Mr. Zheng laughed. Since Mr. Zheng is willing to bring that unpredictable monk with him, it must be a confidant. Qingtong has removed the power fence, a Middle-earth sect that he knows, at best, is too fairyland. Even if it is not in Chen Pingan's dream, visiting the Jiazheng Xiangwen by himself is not a leisurely garden. Take a walk. After hearing the name Mr. Zheng, Qingtong was a little confused. Could it be that Chen Pingan traveled to the Central Earth continent, and then used a pseudonym surnamed Zheng? Chen Pingan said, "Whether Wei Zi is in the mountains, I want to take a trip to the secret realm, and I need you to light a stick of incense each." The immortal Wei Zi is proficient in ghosts, and her way of proving is exactly the place where the evil spirits are strong. Yunyao quickly called her over to Shuixi, Taoist companion Wei Zi, looking at the face of the 28th girl. Chen Pingan then roughly said the reason for this trip, and both Yunya and the Taoist couple did not hesitate, and they readily agreed. As for those two merits, Yunyi was actually unwilling to accept, but he dared not refuse. Wei Zi then opened the door of the secret realm and led the city lord of the Baidi city into that secret dojo together with a female sister who was most likely to be in ascendant realm. In the land of thousands of miles, the evil spirits are rising, the smoke is billowing, and there are tens of thousands of lonely ghosts floating around, but there is no sense of filth, and there are even several cities in which ghosts live, and they are extremely prosperous. It is a kind of Tongxian handwriting that seems to recreate Yangjian. Chen Pingan and his party are now standing on a high platform that looks like the center of the sky and the earth. Qingtong's realm is enough, staring at the seemingly filthy but clear-spirited heaven and earth, he said to Chen Pingan with his heartfelt voice, "As long as these immortal and humane couples are not arrested here, they are gathered around and lost their sacrifices. The ghosts are a merit in themselves. And seeing that those ghosts can maintain a little real spirit, they seem to have a going place, so the latter is more likely. It is very likely that this is a link between the sun and the underworld. The bridge crossing the river, yes, this female cultivator should be the kind of legendary mountain barman. I really underestimated the Josian Immortal Pavilion, this Middle-earth god continent. There are indeed many strange people and strangers." Seeing that Mr. Zheng did not speak, Yunya and Wei Zi looked at each other. Wei Zi also joked before, if the other party is a guest at the Josian Immortal Hall, how will the husband behave himself? Now Yunyao wants to say something with a smile, would you still doubt the identity of the other party? The prohibition on the landscape of the Nine Realms Immortal Pavilion is not something that a random ascendant can come and go freely. Mr. Zheng's identity is naturally true and there is no doubt about it. Besides, just to mention that Mr. Zheng's entourage, the condensed Dao Qi, is not more astonishing than the old soaring of Nan Guangzhao and his ilk. Wei Zi said with a coquettish voice, "It's been a long time since the cooking is broken, and the fish is raw in the cauldron. This kind of clumsy trick will only laugh generously in the eyes of the Taoist. Chen Pingan shook his head. You are interested. Yunya whispered softly, it's a pity that this secret realm is firmly connected to the ancestral mountain of our Juzhen Immortal Hall and cannot be moved. If this is not the case, otherwise Yunya really plans to relocate this place to Tonggishao or Fiuzhou. Chen Pingan was silent. Because at this moment Chen Pingan even has a conjecture that he feels very horrible. Only a handful of mountain monks would guess that Jing Juzhong had actually been among the 14th realms. Then only a handful of monks knew that Jing Juzhong had not only entered the 14th realm, but also had one person and two 14th realms. Then is there a possibility that Jing Juzhong still has a third clone who has been practicing quietly in that dark place for many years? Chen Pingan calmed his mind and asked casually, is the sect that Nan Guangzhou stayed in, the Juzhen Immortal Hall, almost digested? Yunyao bowed his head and clasped his fists to thank him. 7 or 8, it's already something in the belly. Nan Guangguang was decapitated by the criminal officer Hao Su, and this Mr. Jing in front of him was the last hermit of the Great Wall of Jinqi. Isn't it simple and easy? If it weren't clear that Jing Juzhong wouldn't mind this misunderstanding of just wrong, Chen Pingan would have slapped Yun Ye's head with a slap. Would he have a degree of wonder? With a strange mood, Chen Pingan left the Jizengshan Hall with Qin Tong. Inside the water pavilion, Wei Zi asked in his heart, what do you think Mr. Jing did this way? Yunyi fell to the dust and smiled and said, why should we be mediocre and count the hearts of the heavens? Just watch from the sidelines and wait and see. Mr. Jing's conspiracy must be beyond imagination. Wei Zi covered his mouth and smiled. The husband is self-conscious, and never thought that there would be a day when he would willingly call himself a mediocre. On the long journey, in the Qingtongsan Lake, there are turbulent waves. Finally came to the aftertaste. Who could be that Yunya and Wei Zi, a pair of immortals, who are like gods from the bottom of their hearts, and whose surname is Jing? Putting on Milei's Qing Tong again, he raised Milei again, turned to look at Chen Pingan, with a timid expression, cautiously said, before many offenses, I hope Jing. Mr. Chen has a lot, don't worry about it. Since he is afraid of the embroidered tiger Cui Yang, how can Qing Tong not be afraid of the other chess player in the 10th game of Kai Yun, the lord of Beidasheng Jing? Chen Pingan said helplessly, do you and Yunya use the same brain? Qing Tong felt that he was not stupid, and he wondered if it was so. Who on earth is Chen Pingan, and his true identity, became more and more confused. Be careful to sail the ship for 10,000 years. I would rather believe it if you have it than if you don't believe it, and treat it as that person. Before leaving Tonggishao, the master of Bixiao Cave of Guandao Temple had a farewell to Qin Tong. Lao Guanzhu also had a comment on the pros and cons of the world's heroes, such as Fu Lu Yu Xian, the pure young Taoist Lu Yan. Heavenly Master Zhao Tianlai, Ai Aizhou God of Wealth Lu Jubao, and the real person of the fire dragon on Difeng, should have been a 14th level but missed Wei Shi. Swordsman Pei Min Taoist Liang Shuang. As for Huayin and his ilk, they don't seem to be worthy of being brought to the table by the old master. Among them, of course, there is the awe-inspiring demon Dao giant, Beidasheng Jing in the middle. You don't need to be too jealous of the people Jing in the center, the whole world, at most one hand. In addition to the word too much, the key is that the old view master also added 2 words, now. If it were not for this small chat with the old Guanzhu, Qing Tong would really not be so afraid of a great monk from the Middle-earth divine continent. The big deal is that the water in the well does not invade the river. Besides, both sides are ascending to consummation, and Qing Tong is happy to be quiet, and only needs to stay in the town demon building, and will not take the initiative to provoke Baidi City. In the end, the old master gave a conclusion. In the future, it will be as long as 200 or 300 years, and as long as 1,000 years. When the 5 worlds are added together, the mountain monks with at most hands can try to break their wrists with Jingzhuzhong. If there is a brand new one of the world's top 10, there must be a place for Jing in the middle. Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Since you are so in awe of Qingzhu, do you want to understand a truth? A person who cultivates the Tao needs to cultivate his strength and his mind." Qing Tong nodded vigorously and said, "The most reasonable." Chen Pingan couldn't laugh or cry, really felt a bit useless. "I have a hard questioning, and I have to add Xiaomo's questioning sword. It turns out that it is not as effective as if Mr. Jing." On the way to Sui Mountain in Zhongtu, Qing Tong has been carefully looking at the green shirts around him from the corner of his eye. Finally found that the other party had a smiling face, as if thinking of a happy thing, with gentle eyes. At the age of 14, after leaving his hometown for the first time, Chen Pingan traveled a long way, drank many kinds of drinks, and saw many people and things, but every year he walked, he would have to go more. "Haven't eaten moon cakes in a year. How many times have you eaten?" Chen Pingan is actually not very sure, because there are vague memories. It seems that there were only 2 times before the 5th age. Even if the Luopa mountain became more and more lively and there were more and more people later, Zhu Lian managed to keep things dripping, and Xiao Wanchu was careful, but this matter was forgotten. Chen Pingan made up his mind that this year's Mid-Autumn Festival, in Luopa Mountain, must enjoy the moon and eat moon cakes. The Mid-Autumn Festival has a bright moon, rich and poor, which is very comforting. Sword of Coming Chapter 935. Sui Shan in the Soil. On the top of the mountain, a golden-armored man with a sword in both hands slowly opened his eyes. The of the mountain monarch, his real name travels around, and the name of the god. Howren Jojo mountains and rivers in the world, the world's first mountain god. Zhou Yu looked at the Qing Shan swordsman who was standing thousands of miles away. Not far or near, this person happened to be on the border of Beiyue, with a rebel by his side. Zhou Yu frowned slightly, thinking together, the dream shattered, and there was a faint sound of cracks in porcelain between the heaven and the earth. Zhou Yu looked at the green-shirt guest in the distance, and asked, "How did you do this?" After all, forcibly dragging a Middle-earth Deiyue mountain monarch into a certain dream state, even the peak cultivator of the ascending state could not do it. What's more, it is not a fun thing to do this kind of activity when it is full. Of course, except for the real fire dragon in Luzhou, Beiju, and did it twice. The first time was the proof of the real fire dragon from the fairyland to the ascended realm. He once sleepwalked the Wayuhudu. The second time was that the old was completely boring, using the rhetoric of the Huolong real person, it is the poor way and the poor, you can't afford an intercontinental ferry. NS. The young hidden official looked sincerely and said, "If you are sincere, then you will have the same strength." The burly golden-armored man took a deep breath, chuckled, raised one palm, and patted the hilt with his palm. His mother is very familiar, it couldn't be more familiar, because it sounds like an old scholar. Zhou Yu and Chen Pingan have actually met many times. The last time I participated in the Confucian temple discussion, the two sides did not have a word. The young hidden official seemed to have a guilty conscience, and he didn't dare to get close to this great Suishan god. After all, for the first time being a guest at Suishan, Chen Pingan was still a silly straw-shoe boy. He once broke through the prohibition on Suishan's landscape with a sword and committed a disrespectful act. Because of this incident, a lot of suspicions from the monks at the top of the Middle-earth mountain were provoked. After that, the ancestral temple received a lot of letters inquiring about the matter, and traveling around was too lazy to reply. Is it true that the invincible person in the Qingming world left by Yujing and traveled far to Suishan with the sword? Or those old sword immortals from the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and Suishan turned their old accounts? Speaking of Howren's native swordsmanship, who would dare to act so presumptuously and want to go to Gondolin to eat prison and read sage books. In addition, there was one time, but the two sides did not meet, because it was Chin Pingon who was forced to come here to meet with the Holy Master. Traveling around cannot go to see the annoyed look of old Xiuzai scratching his cheeks and beating his chest, but the ears can't escape the noise of the old Zaikai's mother-in-law. It is really annoying, so I have to say, take some detours and suffer more. Isn't it a good thing? As a result, traveling around and not talking is okay. Upon hearing this, the old scholar seemed to have finally found a reason and started swearing, "Damn. He is taller, standing taller, older and more capable, so he likes to stand and talk without back pain, right? Endure hardship. How do you want that child to endure hardship?" Shou Yu said disapprovingly, "I was born in a poor alley, lost my parents when I was young, unable to study, isolated and helpless, so I had to wander around and work hard for a living. To be honest, this hardship is nothing." It's not difficult for Chin Pingon to find hundreds or thousands of people his age who have experienced similar situations. The old scholar sighed, probably reluctant to say more about it, and ended the topic with a sentence of, "Numbness, you know what a fart. Pleasure in suffering is just the way to live in the world, without self-knowledge of suffering, is the way of standing up." The Suishan mountain in the middle soil is towering and unparalleled, and all things are developed, which is extremely high in the sky. The 5 sacred mountains must be dome and bulge, steep to the sky, and the water should be deep and wide, with a long history, and aeration with the sea. Therefore, there are Confucian sages commenting on this. The way of the sage is tall, similar to the mountain, and the highest is above the sky. Standing next to Chin Pingon, this is the first time Qin Tong has seen the magnificent scene of Suishan with his own eyes. It is indeed the only one in the world. It's no wonder that the most sacred master would choose this place as a temporary study dojo to fight against the great ancestor of Moon Mountain. Qin Tong had previously visited the 5 sacred mountains of Beipingzu with Qin Pingon. He only talked about the Tao Qi contained in the mountains and rivers. Compared with that, the Qi practitioners of the middle 5 realms, who were just like earth immortals, encountered a soaring realm. The flower and fruit stuffed in Suishan is as famous as the Qingshan wine in Zhuhai Dongtian and the Baihua stuffed in Baiwa Fudi. In addition, the Suzhai in Shanjun Temple is even more famous in Zhouzhou. The voyage of the Dajiao has a lofty status and vast magical powers. It is rumored that it is much higher than the other 4 Zongtian monarchs. According to the old View Master, as long as he travels in the Suishan area, he can be regarded as most of the 14th level monks, second only to the Jingsheng Shiping who is in the Forest of Merit. Shou Yu and Chin Pingon said, "You and I meet at the mountain gate." Maybe in this dream, I'll just swim in the water mansion to see the water god, no I'll pay my respects to the mountain. Shou Yu said, "It can be regarded as a kind of gentleman who loves money and uses it in a proper way." By the way, Chin Pingon, the last time the Confucian temple was discussed, why didn't you even get a sage? Among the disciples of Wensheng's lineage, Li Baoping is already a gentleman, a veritable female master, and Li Huai and Dolly's servant Zhao Yu are both sage titles. Among Chen Ping's students, there is another student named Xiao Sunny. Fortunately, this person seems to be a different scholar from Shizu and his husband. Chen Pingon said, "If the seniors are willing to recommend 1 or 2, and say a few fair words at the Confucian temple, the juniors would like to thank you in advance." Shou Yu smiled and said, "I don't want to avoid relatives, nor is it my turn to be an outsider with a background. Among the several descendants of Wenxing's lineage, there must be only the youngest guy who can say such things. It is no wonder that the old scholar is the most partial disciple, most like him, loved to drink the most, thick-skinned, and elders. The key is that Chen Pingon has also found a wife, and Qing is better than Lan from Lan. Is it a breakthrough for Wenxing's lineage? Just talking about the relationship between the elders, Cui Yang, the former literary saint, was too talented, so even if the embroidered tiger is clearly gentle, looks gentle, and treats others politely, he will still give people the illusion of domineering, and his disciple Qi Jingchen it is because of the deep living and simple, rarely go out to travel. Because of his birth, how many people can be older than him, so how many elders in the world dare to regard themselves as elders? As for the person with the worst temper, who is generally recognized as a Wenxing in the same vein, before practicing the sword, he was born with a cold face. After practicing the sword, it was even more troublesome for the old talent to make smiles and apologize. Chen Pingan asked with a smile, "Can senior fellow Taoists make an exception to step into the land and be a guest in the mountains?" This guy has long been fascinated by our Suzhai in Suishan. Traveling around was non-committal, he smiled, "How come it's let Suishan?" Chen Pingan said, "Since the senior is familiar with her husband, he is a good friend, how can the junior and Suishan be considered half-done?" Zhou Yu reminded, "Since the relationship is only half-baked, don't make the idea of those inscriptions." Chen Pingan asked, "The incense of Mount Jushan?" Zhou Yu nodded and said, "No problem. The old scholar does have a good student who can share the worries for her husband. In the future, the truth of this deed of repairing the land gap will become clear to the world." With the consistent style of the old scholars, let alone the sages of the Confucian temple who will be annoyed, I am afraid that even if it comes to the saint of ceremony, the old scholars will all a few words but old talents may also rarely be silent. Like reading a good book, not willing to share it. Qing Tong, who stood in place obediently waiting for the news, suddenly sounded a decree from Suishan in the Lake of Heart, which unexpectedly allowed her to climb the mountain to visit the mountain and eat a bowl of plain noodles. The God-man, the golden body, has no leakage. From Qingtong's aura of sight, it is a kind of majestic atmosphere of the mountain is almost in line with the sky. So Qingtong always felt that on the border of the Zhongyue land, if Zhu Yu handed a sword from Suishan, Qingtong waited a little, and he might not have to go back to Tongyi's house. So I was lucky enough to be able to go to Suishan to eat the plain noodles before leaving. It was really a surprise. The young fellow respectfully bowed to Yao Yao. After thanking Zhou Yu, he drew a gourd and drew on a gourd and learned the same way as Qin Ping's. He arrived at the foot of the mountain and stepping out of a picture of dreams, even if today is New Year's Eve, the good men and believers who burn incense along the main Shinto path are still in an endless stream, the voices are so full, and the incense of Suishan is so prosperous, it is no wonder that traveling can refine that gold body. Qingtong wears a power fence again, hides in the ranks of ordinary masters, and walks in the bustling mountain road. Qingtong is complacent and looks quite contented. Hanging out with Mr. Zheng, I really don't have to worry about eating and drinking. Look, the great god Suishan must give a face. Zhou Yu took Chen Pingan to the top of Suishan mountain, ascending and looking into the distance, teaching people only think that all the mountains outside this mountain are small. Someone once said that the chaos of Shinto is one. Some people say that my way is consistent. As for the two sides, who is right and wrong, who is the unity of all things, and who is the life of all things, for the time being, there is no answer. Zhou Yu asked, "Why does this youth think you are Jingzhuzhong?" Chen Pingan said frankly, "I was misled by Yun Lu of Zhejian Immortal Hall." Zhou Yu smiled and said, "It seems that smart people are most afraid of Jingzhongzhong." Chen Pingan nodded and said, "Anyone who is too smart will be afraid of the smartest person." Zhou Yu's eyes are playful, and he squints at Chen Pingan. Chen Pingan understood clearly and shook his head, "I may not be able to reach the mental strength of senior brother and Mr. Jing in my life." Qingtong didn't dare to take a long walk and climb the mountain. At the moment, he was seated in a noodle shop near the Shanjun temple and had a bowl of hot plain noodles. The taste was very good and the reputation was well deserved. Zhou Yu said, the opportunity that originally belonged to the Xiafengdu sword pill is outdated, but now it has already been spent elsewhere. Chen Pingan smiled freely, it's just a matter of fate. Zhou Yu nodded, if you don't have this kind of mind, you would still ask for a pure sword repair in the 14th realm, and said, it's not better than the other 8 continents, especially the Aquarius and Beiju Luzhou. One is your hometown after all. The status of a hermit is the most effective, and it is naturally close to you. But this Middle-earth divine continent has always been the most polite. Being young and vigorous and ignoring the rules are 2 different things. For the rest of the Mountain Monarch Mansion, I will say hello to you first. Just say that you will travel to the 5 sacred mountains next time, how about it? Of course, Chen Pingan would not refuse, and thanked him. Just let Qing Tong finish the bowl of plain noodles. Before leaving, Chen Pingan and Shan Jun traveled around and thanked them. Sui Shan is the only place where my husband can drink happily. In the future, as long as there is a place where Luopa Mountain and Qingping Jianzong can be used, the younger generation can only be sent. Traveling around is not polite with young people. Is to be kinder than the old star. Zhou Yu didn't even feel that Chen Pingan was saying something that would be cost-effective. After only waiting for the patriarch of the 3 teachings to go out of the way, it will be a new situation that has not been seen in the world for 10,000 years. Only those 14th realm cultivators who are unconstrained will show up one by one when they want to, and they will all take their own shots. On the avenue, chaos was everywhere. Yangmo conspiracies are coming in abundance. You must know that before leaving Suishan, Master Most Saint once said to Li Xing, after I leave, the plan for you will follow, so be careful. The 5 mountains in the Middle Earth are Sui Mountain, Gui Mountain, Jui Mountain, Yinji Mountain, and Jiushu Mountain. The female mountain monarch of Yinji Mountain, named Shu Yuxian, has a rather weird name, bitter vegetable. At that time, the husband restored the Confucian temple, and Zhu Yuxian gave a gift from all directions at Gongda, including an origami black-clothed swallow. On the side of Jui Mountain, Shanjun presented a pot of Wenyun calamus at that time. However, the 2 mountain monarchs who sit in Guishan and Jushu respectively participated in the discussion of the Confucian temple, but they did not go to the Gongda forest. On Gishan's side, it was because of an old grievance that he didn't deal with Wenxing's line. There are 5 mountains in one country, and Mount Gui is one of the 5 mountains on a continent. There are a large number of 5 mountains under its jurisdiction. In one of these mountains, the old scholar once went to visit once because of his disciple Jun Qian. In fact, Qin Tong did not sprinkle salt on Chen Pingan's wounds, because this kind of reckless visit would definitely annoy people in vain, and it was no less unpleasant than the market in the mountains. It was a big deal. Taboo things, to give the simplest example, in the future, if Chen Pingan travels to the Guishan and Jushu mountains, even if the 2 Wuyue mountain monarchs do not know Chen Ping's whereabouts at all, they will still create an illusory avenue out of thin air. Win over. Chen Pingan said, if you don't really ask for a request, how can you know that there is no case? As long as there is any mountain monarch who is willing to agree to the 5 sacred mountains in the Middle Earth, in addition to traveling around Suishan, for example, if the Jushu mountain nodded, then Chen Pingan will rerun Guishan, Yanzishan and Jiu Mountain. Ishan. If it was Shu Yuxian, who was visiting for the 2nd time, nodded and agreed, then the 3 mountain monarchs including Huailian might not be able to send Chen Pingan so easily. Just giving a sum of merit is not enough, so what about fame and fortune? To know the boundaries of the 5 sacred mountains, from the mansion of the gods to the many Taoist temples in the mountains, Chen Pingan has long been able to find out clearly, only that the female sword with which Zhu Yuxian became attached is repairing Zhu Mei. The latter is still as a young girl. Zhu Mei had followed Lin Junbai to the Great Wall of Jinqi. There are many martial arts in Jushu Mountain, but will Shan Jun Hui Lian too much? For example, Chen Pingan promised to break the boundary by himself, or who would break through the boundary with the strongest in Luopa Mountain and would choose Jushu Mountain. And there are many swordsmanships in the Gui Shan realm, and Shan Jun doesn't deal with his own Wenqing in the same line. In the future, those sword fairy embryos who have a secret lantern from the Shanjun's mansion hanging behind their backs will be able to practice leisurely. It is best to behave in a decent manner. Don't be too arrogant. Otherwise, the flying sword won't be long if you ask the sword to take the sword. Of the eyes. Another example is the Niaoja mountain, where the place where the monarchy is closed, but it is one of the two princely mountains of Jushu Mountain. Chen Pingan laughed at himself, for different. Cui Yang, Jingzhuzhong, Wushuangjiang are really hard to learn. If it were changed to senior brother Cui Yang to take this trip to the 5 sacred mountains of China, with the same realm and the same identity, it is estimated that no matter what the feelings in their hearts, the 5 mountain monarchs would definitely nod their heads eventually. In Guishan, known as the Land of the Moon, there is a noble guest who will not drive away, Gu Qingsong with the road name Xiancha, and an unnamed senior disciple who taught Lu Qin as the 3rd head of Baiyujing. Gu Qingsong complained to the mountain monarch, "What's the matter with you? Why don't you listen to persuasion at all? If you become a mountain god, you can't understand people, right?" The elegant-looking elders in Confucian shirts have become accustomed to this. Someone's speech only needs to go in and out of the right ear. Gu Qingsong said to himself, "Remember the stinking problem of eating or not, at the beginning, on your plate." The top of the alternate mountain was one of the alternate hills, but it was not because Lu 16 was not allowed to travel and eat. After a lot of hardship, I also accused Lu Shizhua of being a beast with a flat-headed hair. Whatever the result, he was trampled on the ground by the old scholar with a few feet and fell into the ground for more than 100 meters. I have to learn from the old scholar to protect my shortcomings, right? I helped quarreled to the Confucian temple. How did it end? I heard that the embroidered tiger, who worked as a brother for Lu 16, directly gave the mountain monarch on the top of the mountain. Nearly 100 crimes are listed, each of which can be investigated. Not to mention that the top of the mountain failed to regain its height. I just ate in prison at Gongdalan. Was it delicious? You were embarrassed at that time. Anyhow, it was a great mountain monarch. At that time, why didn't you directly use your live's magical powers to help dig a hole in the temple of Confucius? Now, who doesn't know that Lao Xiaocai is the most partial disciple of Qin Pingan, the closed disciple? Are you on the pole? Mr. Lao Shan frowned and said, "Is there no end?" Gu Qingsong snorted, "If I don't have anything to ask, I would rarely tell you these truths." Mr. Lao Shan said, "I got a decree from the Confucian temple before, but I just acted according to orders." Gu Qingsong doubted. "It was Saint Naya who spoke and asked you to stumble Qin Pingan." Lao Shan Jun said angrily, "Speak carefully." Gu Qingsong said to himself, "Surely it won't happen. If Yaxing doesn't deal with Wenqing again, it is also a dispute of knowledge. Liang is a coup-headed strategist in Wensheng's line. Poor. Otherwise, which Confucian temple leader? Shouldn't be. Now that Lao Xiao has just recovered his status, with a hard waist and a big voice, Jingxing Shiping is an ear reporting who can't control his mouth. I have the best relationship with the old scholar. In the Confucian temple, who has such a hard head? Lao Shanjun said, "That decree has no signature." Gu Qingsong rubbed his chin, "That's weird. The little master always tells people that they don't do secret things, but it's not the instruction of the sub-sage. Could it be that the holy master, like me, came to the Tianjin Daoyu side, have something to ask for?" Lao Shanjun furiously said, "Gu Qingsong, you don't have to talk about it. If you dare to talk nonsense, go down the mountain immediately." Never thought that Gu Qingsong dropped his sleeve and said, "Just leave." He really disappeared in a flash and went outside the mountain. Just a moment later, Gu Qingsong shrank the mountains and rivers again and returned to the place. Gu Qingsong said, "I was driven out by you twice, and I have been asking for help 3 times in total. Friends Tianjin, you don't give me the slightest face anymore. I really want to swear. No matter how good Lao Shanjun is to raise qigong, he can't stand Gu Qingsong's open eyes and talk nonsense. Dare you Xianchan not open your mouth and be a mute before?" Gu Qingsong shook his head and said, "Isn't it as good as a young man in his early 40s who can hold his breath? Tianjin Daoist, a lot of years old, have all lived to a certain dog day. There are many mountain monks in the world, and at least half of their popular nicknames come from Gu Qingsong's mouth. This person can still jump alive to this day. I have to say it is a miracle." In the Jushu Mountain, a new wine shop has been opened in recent years, but the reputation is not obvious and the threshold is high, so there have been few customers. At the moment, apart from the old shopkeeper and a shop assistant named Su Jia, there are only a wine guest. Shanjun has a lot of flowers. An old Taoist riding a green bull, carrying a bag crossbody, adorned with a row of emerald green bamboo pipes, bumped against each other, crisp and sweet. "Having saved enough money for drinks, I'm here to drink again today." In the ancient years, each of the 5 sacred mountains in the Middle Earth had a real person's administration. Among them there were 3 real persons. And this monarch, who is known as the Qingniu Taoist priest, happened to be one of the 1 principal and 2-3 true men. After leaving the night ship, the old Taoist priest came here to revisit the old place and reopened the dojo at the old site in the mountains. It is just that the authority of the past years is a thing of the past. In the early days, the 5 sacred mountains in Dadu, the real people in charge were not the mountain monarchs and the water gods, but the land gods, who were invited by their saints to come out of the mountain. When Li Xing later abolished all the real person government, Feng Jun went out and traveled, but he provoked swordsman Pei Min. The sky and the earth seemed to be unstable, so he had to hide on the night ship. The old Taoist put the green cow outside the door, entered the wine shop alone, and had a slap in the door with the mountain monarch Huilian, and then asked the old treasurer for a pot of Wang Yu wine. People are in good spirits at happy events. On the night boat, the old Taoist priest and the young hidden official made a deal and obtained a true picture of the 5 sacred mountains of the ancestors' rank. Harmony generates wealth. This is called harmony and wealth. To be honest, Chen Pingan finally failed to climb the mountain today. The old Taoist was actually quite regretful. When he came on the road, he thought of going to the wine shop. When he met the unkind mountain monarch, he would hold a few words for the young hermit. Just work. There was a bird cage on the counter, and there was an oriole inside. Seeing the old Taoist priest who came to sit down, he opened his mouth and said, "Trash, trash." The veteran Taoist was not at all annoyed, and he smiled and said, "A cultivator of immortality in the poor way is not a pure martial artist who can only fight and kill. He can have a few kilograms of martial arts." Su Jia put the hip flask and the white bowl on the table, and dismantled the platform and said, "Master Shanjun just said, not mentioning Chen Pingan, only that the sycamore tree spirit of the town demon building, in addition to the Ascension Realm cultivation base, can also be regarded as half a godly martial artist." Feng Jun smiled and said, "Poor Dao is competing with a sycamore tree, and it won't be impossible." The old shopkeeper leaned over the counter and said with a smile, "I was so clumsy that I couldn't see the depth of the hidden official's martial arts." As soon as he mentioned the young hidden official who had drunk twice in his shop, the shop assistant Su Jia became angry and said annoyed, "The innocent sign of the small wine shop in Jinchi Great Wall, but they all learned from our shop." Feng Jun took a sip of his drink and sighed with his beard, "I was on a night boat, and I had a chance to meet Chen Daoyu." There was still a discussion about each other. There is a saying in Qindaoyu that there is no lack of the world's Taoism. It's just that the Taoist priests on the street are worried about them. It's really true, no water leaks. It's no wonder that at a young age, you can be in a high position and perform successive feats. Su Jia said, "That guy is lucky." The old shopkeeper smiled and shook his head, because Su Jia and Chao Xiai are friends, so Chen Pingan is not pleasing to the eye all the time. Feng Jun even shook his head, holding a bowl with one hand, and then raising one hand, retorting, "This is a bad remark, to underestimate Qindaoyu. A man is so hungry that he can eat 9 big meat buns in one breath, and ordinary people eat buns. The more you eat, the more unpalatable. If you eat the first steamed bun, the taste is the same as the 9th steamed bun. This is a cultivator. In this life, the poor Tao will travel north and south, travel the world, and read countless people, like Qindaoyu, a handful of them." Huai Lian said, "You two just ask if you want to. You don't need to be circumspect." One deliberately involved Chen Pingan, and the other took the conversation. In the final analysis, he was still curious about why he refused to climb Chen Pingan. Feng Jun asked curiously, since fellow Dao Huai Lian doesn't have a bad feeling for the young hidden official, and even has a somewhat undisguised look at him, why should he not be allowed to climb the mountain today? "What's the matter?" Huai Lian sneered, "Sword repair does not look at one's own realm, does it also depend on identity?" Feng Jun shook the wine bowl, "But after all, isn't this a reason not to let him climb the mountain? In addition to his identity as a sword repairman, Chen Pingan is still a martial artist who can compete with Chao Xiai in 4 rounds. Huai Lian said, "The reason is given, believe it or not, you are free." Feng Jun looked regretful and said, "Unfortunately, on the ship, the news is not well informed, otherwise even if the poor Dao sells iron, he will have to collect a sum of money and bet on Qindaoyu to win Chao Xiai." Regarding Chao Xiai and Chen Pingan, 2 martial artists of the same age, the monks on the mountain and the martial artist on the mountain were arguing and quarreling endlessly in the dispute between the 2 martial artists of the same age. The monks in the mountains generally admire Chao Xiai, and feel that in the future martial arts, Chen Pingan will not be able to stand side by side with Chao Xiai in this life, so he can only catch up all the way. Chao Zihue was Chen Pingan's lifelong martial arts skill. If he is lucky, he can be awarded the title of second under heaven. However, pure Wufu mostly agrees with Chen Ping and even more. There is only one point of view, and a consensus has been reached on the mountain. That is not to talk about the final height of the martial arts of Chao and Chen, only the process of practicing martial arts and boxing. You can learn from Chen Pingan, but you don't need to learn from Chao Xiai. Chen Pingan took Qingtong to leave Zhong to Shenzhou, returned to Aquarius Island, and walked on a ridge road called Deswiling. Qingtong didn't dare to say, "I have really visited the mountain temple here, even if it is finished, can I return to Tonggizong?" Chen Pingan gave a hum. The mountain goddess Wei Wei walked out of the clay statue in the temple, waiting for her to see the young sword fairy in the blue shirt, long coat and cloth shoes, a little embarrassed. "Mr. Chen, Chen Jianxian, Lord Chen, Master Hermit." If Wei Wei remembers correctly, this is the 4th time Chen has been here. 4 times in less than 30 years. Hey! Could it be? When she thought about it together, she couldn't wait to slap herself in the face. Is that silly book of landscape travels? Did you forget the scene when you first met? There is never the slightest bit of pity, fragrant and cherished jade, only the flower is destroyed by hand. Now the mountain temple is lavish and developed. Wei Wei had to admit that it was all given by the person in front of him, and the numbers that Qin Jianxian taught to his family temple before were really useful. Sort of coming. Chapter 936. Walking out of the long river of time, Ching Tong took a closer look, and wondered, why didn't you go back to the town demon building directly? Is there a mountain on Aquarius Island who wants to see? Chen Pingon shook his head and said, I've never been here before. It's just that someone made a temporary intention. Let me treat the guests as if I were to come here to see someone off. Ching Tong is becoming more and more puzzled. Who can point your finger at you? I can see a sparkling spot not far away. A pavilion is hidden in the shade of green trees, and a few melodious and clear chimes upstairs are vaguely heard. Chen Pingon said, let's go to the front and wait for the rabbits. Approaching, it is a large-scale shrine, Banj Fen Shrine. There are 2 ancient locust trees in front of the door. Outside is a large pond. Willows are planted around the water and there are a few green trees outside the door. The horse is tied in the shade of the willow, and there is another embroidered carriage, parked at the corner of the temple. It should be a family member of a rich family. The old coachman is wearing a thick cotton robe with his hands in his sleeves, and he is dozing in a daze. Son. Ching Tong followed Chen Pingon into the ancestral temple. Since it was New Year's Eve, the natural incense was like a natural incense. So far, there are no good men and women who come here to respect the incense. Only in the corridor outside the hall, there are a few children in children's costumes, squatting down, throwing copper coins to play underneath, and seeing Chen Pingon and the others, they just looked up and didn't say hello. There are moon cave gates on both sides. If you want to visit the back hall of the ancestral temple, you must pass by. Chen Pingon stood outside the threshold of the main hall for a moment, then walked to the moon cave. No one was seen. First listen to the ringing sound, which is crisp and sweet. 2 beautiful women walked out head-on. One woman, turned into a cloud bun, leaning to Cui Chiao, wearing a simple and elegant woven silk shirt, surrounded by a young girl. About the woman's close-knit handmaid, Ochai's shirt is light green skirt, a pair of slightly old embroidered shoes. There is also an old woman, wearing a bamboo leaf robes, holding a jade wishful in her hand, most of which is the blessing of the abbot of this Fen shrine. Chen Pingon immediately moved to give way. The first woman walked straight without squinting her eyes. The young girl brushed shoulders with the pilgrim man, but couldn't help but look at it from the corner of her eye. The head of this person is not the hosta. The blue shirt and the long coat and shoes are clean. Refreshing. 30-year-old age is just a bit far behind the book, expensive and clear. He is not an outstanding person. If nothing else, he is a poor man in the county town. There is no merit, so come here to burn incense and pray for a title on the gold list? Ching Tong couldn't help but asked softly, who are we waiting for? These 3 people who walked out of the moon cave are obviously just ordinary people with naked eyes. Chen Pingon said in his heart, Lu Xin. The green face changed slightly. I really don't want to have any involvement with that by Yujing Third Master. Only from the current situation, it is difficult not to meet Lu Qin. Beiping's Mengliang is in the country, not far from Fen Shrine. A young Taoist priest walking on a mountain trail, wearing a lotus crown, holding a few unannounced local county chronicles in his hand, looked up at a ferry boat passing by like a bird. Taoism has depths and depths, and eyesight is high and low. Taoist priests on the ground can see each other, but the ferry cannot find the young Taoist priests below. The young Taoist priest lifted his body lightly, dangling in the water, and wandering all the way, feeling that the surface of the water is not windy and the glass is slippery, and the boat is not moving. The young Taoist stopped for a while, and shook his sleeves again, as if there were thousands of threads of thread, far or near, and the thread was called cause and effect. He stretched out his and gently pulled the thread. There seems to be an echo in the distance. The movement is very small, almost completely negligible, but the Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown, the Taoist is high enough, and he looks far away. God's thin Taoism came to the territory of Mengliang country. Finally, at the entrance of a mountain village, I saw a lonely child. The young Taoist priest approached him. After stopping, one bent over and the other raised his head. Both sides faced each other. After watching for a moment, the child was ashamed and lowered his head. I went to the Yuzhang County logging yard before and after bidding farewell to Lin Jingqing, he did not return directly to the Qingming world. Anyway, Bai Yujing had senior brother Yu sitting in the town and couldn't make any mistakes. For example, today the outer heaven suppressed the outer heaven demon, and the master personally ended it. If it weren't for the urgency of the Confucian temple, Lu Chen really wanted to stay in this vast world for a few more years. Just as Yufeng flew up to the sky, Lu Chen suddenly moved his heart slightly, looking for the root. It turned out that it was in the boundary of the Dream Beam country. There seemed to be one person and the same thing, almost at the same time touching the heartstrings, so he changed his mind and went to a nearby place first. Yunxia Mountain, but did not show up this time. The golden core monk Huang Zhongho who cultivated Yunfeng will soon become the new mountain owner of Yunxia Mountain. Yunxia Mountain is now a blessing in disguise and has a prototype of the sect, and everything is ready. I only owe a jade Pu, the old mountain lord, the green cypress peak Kai Jinjian, and Huang Zhongho are all promising. Within 100 years, the sect can be expected. Men spend their sorrows by drinking, and if they have a deep bond with Tianlu, they will become a lover. I don't know that next time I drink with that Huangshan master who is deeply in love, it will be the year of the monkey again. Lu Chen looked down at the child without the qualifications for cultivation, and said, "You are not afraid of birth. It is because the poor students are good-faced. Women and children will inevitably be close to each other after seeing them. By the way, would you say that you are very close?" Mandarin, the worst. Can you understand Mandarin? The child nodded. Although both the Mengliang kingdom and the Qingyuan kingdom have separated from the status of the Dali vassal, the Dali Mandarin is now a Yizhou Yayan, and the monarchs and ministers of the Mengliang kingdom have spared no effort in promoting the Yayan. Many senior teachers of the school, because of this, I have been complaining about it. I am a lot of years old, and I never wanted to be students for those young county instructors. Lu Shen squatted down and said, "Pandao sees your bones are peculiar, dragons roar and tigers roar, and Feng Yuluxiang, like a fierce husband." The child looked blank. Played the piano against the cow. Lu Shen smiled and said, "The monk is like the tea tree on the mountain, the wild is the first, and the garden is the second." Obviously, in Lu Chen's eyes, the genealogical monks like the flowers and trees in the garden are not as spiritual as those who cultivated in the mountains. Lu Shen asked, "Have you ever been to a school?" The child shook his head. Lu Shen pointed to the child's feet. There were some ghost-painted symbols on the ground. "Who did you learn these from?" The child replied honestly, "Go up the mountain to feed cattle, they are all on the rocks, and you will often see them." Lu Shen asked with a smile, "Do you still have cows in your house?" The child said, "Help the people in the village." Lu Shen said suddenly, "I have been busy for a long time, can I have a meal?" The child smiled, with a dark face, a thin body, and the worn-out quilted jacket on his body that was so patched up, and leaning on the crappy needle and thread, there was no lint turned out. Lu Chen lifted his ass, craned his neck, and looked at the top of the mountain. There is no mountain or cliff cut, but it is a treasure land of geomantic omen. There is a clear spring in the mountain. There was an unknown Taoist priest who practiced here. It's no wonder that you will be caught by the wild peach pavilion, and be perceived by yourself in the Yuzhang county of Dali. The Taoist energy of this mountain has been accumulated for a long time, and there is a fairy relationship in the mountain, which is about to overflow. Therefore, every time Tao Qi affects the vibrations and ripples of the mountain roots and water veins, it is like a heartbeat. It's just this kind of heartbeat, known as resonance between heaven and earth, with minimal movement and extremely long intervals. I just happened to be hit by the Nin Taoist passing by boat. Otherwise, even if it was an ascension realm, staying here for a year or a half would only treat this mountain as an ordinary dojo relic. Lu Qin had a small accident, and then pinpointed it. He was surprised. He was not tacky, although the person who approved the Tao here was not high at that time, and when he left the cave in the mountain, he was just a golden pill. Dixian, but this person has no teacher's biography, no chance for the immortal family. Only by self-realization, he has cultivated a clear golden pill. This kind of person is called favored by heaven and earth, without luck, self-realization, on the mountain. If the blessing is better, the achievement will be very exaggerated. Don't talk about the ratio with ordinary masters, but only talk about the number of Qi practitioners, and there are as many as cultivators, and one way of climbing is like Christian carp crossing the river. The Taoist people who can walk to the top of the mountain come and go. After all, they are a handful of rare people. After you sing, I will appear on the stage. They will show their romance and be beaten by the wind and rain. Lu Xun sighed, stood up, and hit the Dong mansion between the cliffs in the mountain. Because I have already guessed the identity of the other party. It's just that Lu Chen's etiquette is not because of who the other party is, but what the other party has done. The wisdom sword slashes the demons while swinging, and the demons go around with lightning for thousands of miles. It can be vaguely seen that there was a middle-aged Taoist priest named Lu Yan, whose name was Chunyang. Here is the golden core, leaving a Tao law swordsmanship pointing directly at the golden core in the mountains, waiting for future generations to be destined. When going down the mountain, he carried a purple bamboo stick in his hand, a large gourd scoop hung from his waist, wrapped his head with a happy towel, a sword on his back, dressed in yellow shirts and hemp shoes, and traveled everywhere. The unknown Taoist left us saying, "Here you will be a golden immortal in another day, and when you hear the sound of the bell in the other day, you will learn the art of gold refining, refining the sun god, finishing the jade refining, and bearing fruit." I met a medicinal picker who entered the mountain at the foot of the mountain. He did not answer any questions. The Taoist only said 4 words, "Thank God." The child hesitated when he saw the young Taoist master doing this. He also faced the mountain. He was so ignorant and obsessed, he gave a big gift. Lu Xun saw this scene and sighed, "If you have a relationship with Tao, it is also with me. No wonder the poor Tao will be drawn here by you." When it comes to the matter of cultivation, the ordinary Xianfu sects on the mountain have a solid aptitude for cultivation. After all laws are impermanent, and the matter of blessing is too illusory and difficult to predict, but for the great monks who have been on the mountain for a long time, they value the cultivation method greater than qualifications. The child in front of him is not qualified to practice, but has a root of wisdom, just like someone's situation. The latter's life porcelain is broken, which means that there is no bowl in his hand and he can't hold things. Lu Xun squatted down again and asked, "What's your name?" The child replied, "There is only a surname, no name. The surname Yi is the leaf of the leaf. A good surname, a leaf of duckweed belongs to the sea." Sure enough, the 3 of us have fate. Lu Qin smiled and said, "As for the surname and the nameless, there are good and bad, don't be too sad. I know a friend who is so miserable. He looks like a magnificent person, has good knowledge, talent, and practice is even more powerful. Sun Dao Chang is the 5th person in the world who can't be beaten by thunder, but this person is the 11th person at the bottom of the list. By coincidence, he doesn't have to be on the list every time. He is a close friend with Na Yaxiang Yao Qing, and he has taken a lot of immortality for himself. The Taoist name is only a lot more than that of the Aizhou Island Wei Shi. Guess what his real name is? The child shook his head. Lu Xun laughed loudly. It's called Zhu Dazhuang. The child was almost out of breath when he looked at the young Taoist. He didn't know what was ridiculous. Isn't it normal to have such a name? Besides, it's a good thing to have a name and a surname anyway. As for the content that is not understood, the child feels like he is listening to the heavenly scriptures. Lu Xun finally stopped laughing and rubbed his stomach, but nowadays, there are not many people who know his name. Peng Dao happens to be one of them. This person was born in Shijing Tuzi. Before climbing and practicing, there was a mantra: can you kill meat if you live for 100 years? Wait until this person has attained Taoism. He is still in a high position, and he is still a hot temper. When encountering people who are not pleasing to the eye, the unpleasant thing is just that the word 100 is changed to 1,000. Moreover, the way of discussing Taoism with people is the only one in Qingming. Either you kill me or I kill you, or he chooses to stand still and let the other party bomb the magic arts. He didn't start until his aura was exhausted and his skills were exhausted. And as long as the opponent doesn't nod his head, he won't do anything, so there was a fight, which lasted 300 years. The former was just a fairy at first, and he was abruptly on the way of fighting and became an ascendant monk. In the end, 300. Getting along day and night in the year, like a shadow, was so forced to go crazy. Rao people are not idiots, and idiots will not forgive others. Lu Xun picked up a branch, twisted his wrists to draw a talisman, and shook the pen to loosen the beads. The spirit is out of the dust, the spirit is strange. Lu Xun asked casually, do you know that he is a fool? The child's eyes are low and his expression is sad. Only listen to the young Taoist leader comforting. How can a fool know that he is a fool? Think about it for yourself, is it true? Before someone passed by here, he gave the child a light pat on the back to help pat the overwhelmed old accounts, like turning a page in the old almanac. The child seems to be resuscitated all at once. Lu Xun lost the branch, clapped his palms, smiled and said, there are roughly 2 types of fools, both of which can be regarded as idiots. First of all, I declare that I have told you that this is not a derogatory term, nor is it a complimentary term. Can't listen understand the meaning of commendation and derogation. To put it simply, there is no difference between good and bad words, just a common saying. One is the previous you, confused, like dreaming alone. Only you know this dream, and you don't know anything about people outside the dream, so you will be treated as a fool by the outsider. There is also a kind of idiots, those who are cultivators, that is, the so-called mountain gods in the book. They have to abandon the 7 emotions and 6 desires that we are born with in order to prove the longevity of the Tao and pursue longevity and the harmony of the sky. There is a world, there is only Tao Fa, no more people around. In the eyes of the poor Tao, this is a dream of the world, everyone is having the same dream. Since it is born, then abandon the lust, this matter is its heavens not to take. Of course, some people regard it as a kind of debt repayment. Only when the debts are cleared can we welcome the heavenly tribulation refreshingly, because in these people's eyes, the heavenly tribulation that broke the realm is God. Renting for many years requires interest. The so-called natural Taoist species and immortal fetuses almost have one thing in common, that is, they are inhuman. Many people who have practiced mountaineering since childhood, more or less have this fairy aura on their bodies, their eyes are cold, their temperament is cold, and their bones are cold. Away from the red dust, living alone, in the land of the abbot, or a small futon, or a small heart fast, repair a golden branch and jade leaf, make a liver and intestines like snow. The monks in the world can call Chengdu an idiot. It is estimated that only Lu Xun can speak it out. I am never afraid of being beaten anyway. Lu Xun moved his butt, picked up the branch he had thrown back, and wrote a word on the ground. Lang hesitated a little, and added another word, Je. Lu Xun asked with a smile, "Which word do you think is more relevant?" The child looked serious, looked down at the two words, and didn't want to lie. After raising his head, he looked embarrassed and said, "It's all good to look at." Recognize these two words again. Lu Xun hey, laughed. Very good, the name is Yelong. I will set foot on the road in the future. Even the road number will be called Hojua. Are all people who have not awakened in Huaiyan only to see who is the first to realize the big dream. The sleep, the awakening. Different accents, one word, two meanings. Lu Xun held the branch, pointed at the Jew, smiled and said, "With this word alone, we are going to give the ancestor 1,000 beatings." Looking at the child in front of him, it was hard for Lu Xun not to miss that boy in Mud Bottle Alley. Presumably for them, going to the grave on Tomb Sweeping Day, watching the moon on Mid-Autumn Festival, and dinner on the 30th New Year's Eve are all three major concerns. Lu Xun sighed. The country and the mountains are the master of impermanence, and there is no definite evidence for the current and ancient scenery. There are only old trees, but only big trees. Have we ever heard of ancient grasses and seen big grasses? The plants die in autumn, and the pines and cypresses live forever. This is fate. Xilan is in charge, and Yushu is born. This is fate. People have fate, and go with the fate, like a leaf of duckweed into the sea. The child's eyes were shining, and he couldn't understand it at all. He just thought it was more knowledgeable. It seemed more interesting than the teacher in the village school. So he admired it very much and asked softly, "Dao Master, you know so much. Have you been a schoolmaster?" Lu Xun waved his hand quickly. If you don't come, I'm not much better than you. You're just eating and drinking in your hometown. I'm just cheating and drinking in a foreign country. I have a shallow way. How dare you call yourself a husband? If it's just the kind of gentleman who teaches and solves puzzles, of course it's not that Lu Xun didn't come, just disdainful of it. By Yujing's fifth city on the 12th floor, each has a master, only 3 heads teach Lu Xun, almost never preaching for anyone, like to go to the house, go to other places to audit. There are occasional exceptions, but unfortunately it is not good for outsiders, but it is the man who wears the lotus head toward the Big Dipper, and I say longevity for the star. Is just Lu Chen's words to Mr. with his own comments. Sanhua Juding is only a real person, and Wuqi Chaoyuan is a god. Gentlemen. But it was born innately. The child asked, "What is the name of the Daoist chief? Can I go to the Daoist chief in the future?" Being favored by others, you always have to pay back, as much as you can pay back, and there can only be more. As for how this principle came about, the child has never thought about it, and may not think about it too much. Lu Xun smiled knowingly. What is Tao and what is reason? It's what we walk on the invisible road under our feet, and we can't speak but practice for it. It's so difficult to talk to people rationally, because the way is different. Lu Xun smiled and said, "My name is just too much." The Zheng who bought the caskets and returned the pearls, the Nangua who was indiscriminately, the Luo Qi who was worried by Luo Qi, the worries off worry about charcoal and wishing the sky to be cold. The potter of 10 fingers do not touch the mud, scales in the building, but today, the poor Dao's name is Su Wugue, New Year's Eve, he will soon leave the old and welcome the new, please be a good omen. I hope that there will be no lonely wild ghost in the world, and there is nothing in the sky outside the sky. There is a way for life and death. Moreover, the name Su Wugue is a character in a book compiled by Fan Dao, Xiao Xiangshu. He is proficient in Xiangma, and is best at picking kalama. Farmers go to the fields, merchants make money, and Su Wugue's Xiangma must get up early. The child was shocked by the words of the young Daoist chief. Daoist Su has written and published books. Misters of the village school can only teach. Lu Shen triumphantly rubbed his chin, smiled and said, "It's easy to talk and talk." Remember that back then, there was a similar look. It turns out that besides setting up a stall and making money, he would prescribe prescriptions. Perhaps everyone has an unbearable lake of slips in their hearts, and probably everyone has a lingering mud bottle alley in their hearts. The only place where you are down is my hometown. I don't see the ancients before, and the people who come later. I have a drunken face with peach blossoms, and my tears burst into tears. The sky is thundering and booming. Lu Shen smiled and said, "Look up." The words and the law followed, and a thunderbolt suddenly sounded in the sky. The child was taken aback. He looked up blankly and looked at the young Taoist master. Lu Shen put his fingers together, tapped the child's eyebrows lightly, muttering words on his mouth. It is like opening the eyes of the sky for this child. From this moment on, this rural orphan surnamed Yi may have officially embarked on the path of spiritual practice. Only after he left, he learned the talisman on the ground again. Then the child's future eyes, if he gains the magical power of looking at the air, can clearly see the ancestors' yin and yin virtues and blessings and luck, such as an old saying circulating in the market. To say that a person's popularity is exhausted is the same, and it is the same to describe a person who is in fortune. Another example is the man in the blue yarn. Of course, it will prosper. Lu Shen then twisted his wrists and rubbed his fingers together, such as lighting a stick of fragrant incense, and the censer on the child's head, as if worshipping 3 feet above his head. Is another amulet given to the child by Lu Qin. It is a celestial talisman, as if it was given the name Wugui. Lu Qin squatted on the ground, shook his arms back and forth, and shook his body back and forth. He smiled and said, "When I leave my hometown one day in the future, I will find a mountain called Shenzongzong. When I see the Taoist priest named Qizhen, you will said that he was Lu Qin who asked you to climb the mountain and let him teach you the magic of the immortal family." The child nodded, but curiously asked, "Dao Master changed his name again?" Lu Shen stood up and smiled. 3-day banquet, 100-day banquet, after all, there is no permanent banquet, just leave it here, there will be a period later. The child seemed to have 1,000 words stuck in his mouth. He didn't know what to say. In the end, he just remembered the previous etiquette. He went with this young Taoist leader, who was very knowledgeable and once published a book, and went to a Taoist chief. Lu Chen stood on the spot. After receiving the gift, he strode away without looking back, but waved goodbye to the child. The young master looked around a few times, walked to the side of the village, bent over, and ransacked a chicken. He got up, held it in his arms, and rushed away. After a few efforts, he disappeared. Only a stunned child was left, and the Daoist stole the chicken and ran away. Is he a helper looking out for the wind? Town Demon Building, under the plane tree. This young fellow has a real body, handsome in appearance, and difficult to distinguish between male and female. The yin who came out of the aperture was the one who followed Qin Pingan, wearing a power fence and wearing a green robe, with a graceful posture. No wonder he would be mistaken for a female cultivator. The other Yangshen's body is the appearance of a burly old man with white hair. Here Qin Tong gathered the of Yang. As for the of Yin who traveled far from the orifice, it was a blessing. I ate a bowl of plain noodles at Suishan at the moment, but I didn't know why. I went to Fen Shrine. Qin Tong had nothing to do, twisting a strand of blue silk on the temples with both hands repeatedly, and found that Xiao Mo had been keeping the head-up position, holding the green bamboo stick lying horizontally on his knees with both hands, staring at the sky in a daze, as if the thoughts had been moving towards the sky. Spread away, immersed in it. Qin Tong is very self-aware, and doesn't think that Xiao Mo is so distracted by thinking of herself as a friend, that even the Dharma image seems a bit sluggish. This shows that Xiao Mo is thinking about a very important thing. But for Xiao Mo, who is now the dead man next to Chen Pingan, can there be more important things than protecting the Tao at the moment? There are only two possibilities. Outside the town demon building, there is a powerful enemy trying to spy on this side, waiting for an opportunity, and it is the kind of big monk who even Qingtong can't detect the clues. There is one possibility left, that is, Xiao Mo has fallen into a kind of spiritual situation similar to the opportunity of breaking. Xiao Mo is indeed wandering infinitely far away. The monster sword repairman who lived in the world after 10,000 years thought of the many scrolls of 10,000 years ago. They were tragic and magnificent, or weird, or extremely mysterious. The picture was finally fixed there. The still familiar ascending platform, where he thought about it, Xiao Mo revisited as he did before. Following that path, his sight went up all the time, and finally an uncontrollable thought came out in his heart. I hand out a sword here, which is equivalent to paving a road. In the end, this sword of light is the road to the sky. The strength of this sword aura, should I have never seen it in the future generations who have slept soundly among the bright moon and bright color for thousands of years? So this is a way to enter the 14th realm. After Xiao Mo had this thought, and became more determined, in the small world of his body, there was a vision. The roots and bones are like mountains, thousands of mountains worship the grass house, and the bloodlines are like rivers and rivers. Each big mansion, meridian, sword chi, sword intent, road, that is, kendo and avenue, all began to show signs of resonance between the earth and the earth. A small-minded little Mo came to an empty realm of his own world, no longer in the costume of the yellow hat and blue shoes, but like the face outside, holding a sword. Because once you set foot on this road and walk this road, it means that Xiao Mo has no turning back. Once you fail, the consequences will be extremely serious. If you are not careful, you will seriously damage the root, and you may even fall directly. This is why a mountain monk who has ascended to perfection, regards the 14 realms one step away as a heavenly moat. Is also why there are some great monks who are famous all over the world. Otherwise, it is like Na Wei Shi, unable to break through the boundary, and the Tao heart is covered in dust, and since then, the will is depressed, and he feels helpless. Otherwise, any ascending cultivator, who does not have great perseverance, the tenacity of Tao Axayan, all of them are beyond ordinary people's imagination. We are indeed this way, which is different from the usual hiking trails. The female cultivators Chowga re-examined in the Qingming world, and the female crown who Chen Pingan had met in riverside discussions. Her name is Wuzhou and the Taoist name is Taiyin. The method of harmony in our continent was once called refining things by Wu Shuangjiang, and was likened to dismemberment by Lu Qin. The degree of danger, just heard by others, knows. The reason why they are mistaken for being dead is that they have been in retreat for too long. But at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in Xiao Mo's heart, and the other party first called Xiao Mo's real name, and then said, Daoist Haizhu, it's late, I'm afraid you have to change your way. The man continued, actually, you are not long late than the sword fairy who is one step ahead. It is equivalent to taking a nap in the mountains, which is a pity. What a heavenly beard-long sword. Although Xiao Mo already knew the identity of the other party, he still asked two questions. Is this person already in the 14th realm or not yet in the 14th realm? And is this person a good friend on the mountain with my son? If it is not a friend of the son. The other party has not yet truly entered the 14th realm, my little Mo cares whether you cross the threshold of the 14th realm with one foot? Even if the opponent is already in the 14th realm, it does not matter, then we will have a great battle, and the two sides are equivalent to asking the sword from a distance. As a result, the person smiled and said, "It's true that he is already in the 14th realm, but only 3 people know about it for the time being, and this person happens to have a relationship with Chen Pingan or a new year, and he likes to call Chen Pingan as Chen Xiaoyu." Of course, Xiaomo would not think that the other party would be joking about this kind of thing. First, he thanked the half-old person from the bottom of his heart. Since he was the first to walk out of this path and had succeeded, it was the Taoist master son of Xiandu Temple, then Xiaomo had to change the road, or else the flood would wash away the Dragon King Temple, and he would only lose out. Xiaomo sighed, and had to forcibly suppress the majestic road scene, put away a grain of mind, and withdrew from Xiaoxiandi. Xiaomo, in yellow hat and blue shoes, held the green bamboo stick lying horizontally on his knees with both hands. His face was pale, his throat moved slightly, and he swallowed the blood abruptly. Qintong looked terrified, Dao Axian trembled, and asked, "What's the matter? Could it be that in this town's demon building, there are powerful enemies hiding in it, but you don't even notice it?" And this person heard Xiaomo. Xiaomo was too lazy to talk, but when he thought of the other party's Yinshin, who was still in a state of wandering together with the sun, he said, "The Holy Master is staring at us here." It's no wonder that there was something wrong before, but there was no trace of it. The whole world is a dojo of one person, plus this scholar, it is another 15 realm. The ancient heaven, the 5 highest, all are the 15th realms in the eyes of later generations of Qi practitioners. As a result, the battle between water and fire caused 2 of the supreme gods to have cracks in their respective golden bodies. The sword-bearer rebelled, causing the armored man to fall into the mansion like a wooden support. But all the monks who have personally experienced or watched the war with their own eyes, everyone knows that the only real variable is actually only one thing. Is the co-master of the court missing? In the battle of turning newcomers for old masters, from beginning to end, the supreme co-lord of the heavens and the world did not even show up. In the past years, there was also a saying that was not widely circulated. The realm of existence may be above the 15th realm. Sword of Coming Chapter 937. On the Fen Shrine, Chen Pingan and Qingtong looked at the sceneries with their own emphasis, so they looked at each one and separated them in order. When Qingtong finished visiting many halls and pavilions, it was discovered that Chen Pingan was no longer in this Hebo temple. Walking out of the temple gate, Qingtong saw a green shirt, sitting on a small bamboo chair in the shade of the willow by the big pond, and began to throw a rod and go fishing. Qingtong walked over and asked, "Are there any bamboo chairs?" Chen Pingan stretched out his finger to his mouth, motioned to make a small sound, and then twisted his wrist to create a small green bamboo chair and handed it to Qingtong. Qingtong sat aside, lowered his voice, and asked in confusion, "This is?" Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Just wait for the weather." Seeing Qing's confusion, Chen Pingan lifted his chin and reminded, temporarily as a water view. Qingtong stared at the water. The pool water was like a mirror, and a dilapidated mansion appeared in the mirror. It's not a very clever way to see the magical powers of the mountains and rivers. After parting from the children in the village, the young Taoist priest with bulging arms stood up from the ground, hovered in the air, on tiptoe, and glanced towards the inside of the city. "Hey, there are some signs of filthy evil spirits and immortal fighting. Could it be a ghost house? I don't know if today's poor Dao is called Su Wugue. Well, if you discuss it well, you can keep the well water from the river. If you don't even want to borrow a kitchen room from the poor Dao, then it's no wonder that the poor Dao will do Tian Xing Dao once." Lu Qin turned his head and glanced at the child surnamed Yi. He was about to come to the divine god sect. Maybe he could be a companion with the little Taoist named Ai in Chiu Haoguan, practice and grow together, and after a long time, he would be a friend. Bi-monthly friends are so rare in this vast world where there is only one bright moon, so you should cherish your true friends more and more. Lu Qin stepped out and went directly to the street outside the door of a haunted house. After pinching his fingers, he knew that the nearby land was called Wuzenfang. The temple's incense was broken long ago. In history, it was demolished and rebuilt into a private residence. Afterwards, it was repeatedly changed. Many ghosts were causing trouble. In the end, most of the beams and timbers of the house were moved to the Fen shrine outside the city. There is only one stone lion, and on the neck, there is a series of tiny potholes, like bead imprints. This place turned out to be the former site of the temple dedicated to the pure Sun Taoist, which was unexpected and reasonable. Lu Qin sighed, Chunyang Dao Yu. Ah, Chunyang Dao Yu, I used to be in by Yujing. We were both from hometown and we were in different places. Now you haven't been in Howren's hometown for a long time, and it's hard to have an ancestral temple. Unexpectedly, I have fallen to this point. Fortunately, I will do my best to add a little incense to your temple. I just don't know where Lu Yen is now, and there has been no news from Lu Yen in the Qingming world for a long time. Lu Qin took out a talisman made of huangxi from his sleeve, and muttered, Heavenly Spirit and Earth Spiritual Spirit, I can do it if the gods show their spirits, stepped back, shook his dantian posture with one hand, gave a light drink, and walked forward like flying forward. Go, one toe hit the ground and jumped high, but it just happened to step on the top of the wall. I couldn't stand up after shaking it a few times. One fell back and landed on the street again. The street was deserted at the moment. No one can see this funny scene. I saw the young Taoist priest holding a yellow talisman, tried twice, and finally squatted on the wall, got up and walked along the wall, tiptoe, climbed over a ridge, stretched his neck, and saw, after a fierce fight, several wild Xiao who seemed to be from the same school, each showing their magical powers, were fighting a pale-faced woman in a red dress. It was vaguely visible that there was a piece of rope tied to her neck, which was probably a hanged ghost, babbling, black smoke billowing, and being broken up one by the elders who came to slay demons and slaying demons by means of ingenious techniques. Generally speaking, one party throws out the magic fairy magic. With sneaky tricks, it is wonderful, it can be regarded as the opponent will meet Liang Kai. Lu Qin sat quietly on the ridge of the roof, looking away. There was a peony in the backyard, which was transplanted from another place. After several dynasties, after it became a refined shape, he was not young. He was about half the owner of this place. Helping the unjust dead, terrorizing the people in the sun, occupying this large mansion, it seems that there is nothing wrong with it, at most it is to abduct the young and strong wine clubs and watchmen who do not return at night, and bring them here. After a cloud and rain, steal some yang energy, and then throw it out of the house at dawn. It's no wonder that the god of water at Fen Shrine chose to turn a blind eye to everything that happened in this mansion with a lot of history. For one thing, he didn't make any unreasonable actions. If you want to defeat this ghost house, you have to mobilize troops and condemn the generals. When the two sides completely tear their faces and let go of their hands and feet, at least the county town will not be able to keep it. In addition, the nearby city temple and the gods of the mountains and rivers can be used. And the soldiers and horses under their command, it is estimated that they are really going to be more vigorous, and they will only come raging and questioning, and they will go back to the house with a gray head and face. In the courtyard, one of the two parties, one of whom had sharp eyes, saw the sneaky young Taoist priest over the roof, and suddenly cursed, "The little bull nose, how dare you come here to grab business with the uncle? Get away." I saw the righteousness of the young Taoist priest and said awe-inspiringly, since ancient times, the Taoist people have a share of the demon and evil spirits. What's more, the poor Tao is born with a strong iron bone and a chivalrous heart. The man shouted, noisy. A dart flicked out of the sleeve. It was as fast as a shooting star, but the tail of the dart hit the mother-in-law Taoist's forehead. Hearing a pain, the young Taoist was caught and fell back on the ground. Rolling all the way on the roof ridge, disappeared. The female ghost with a rope around her neck in the courtyard turned over and over again to the ghost tricks, but the other party was crowded and powerful, and the man who was cultivating the Taoist body was also a man. She was full of yang, gathered together, and her momentum appeared. Quite majestic, she gradually lost the wind, and immediately turned her head and shouted, "Sister, come and help me." Soon there was another blue smoke floating in, condensed into the figure of a female ghost, and she was also a woman, covered in blue silks in a bun, wandering like water weeds, presumably a poor man who was drowned. Lu Qin had already found the stove and kicked the door open, preparing to start a fire and cooking. He can't treat himself badly. He had to have a good New Year's Eve dinner here before going to Qingming World. Bai Yujing didn't pay attention to this. There was too much wind in Xianqi Dao and too little human touch. Seeing that the chopping board and everything were ready, Lu Qin took out the fire fold from his sleeve and found the bamboo tube that was blowing the fire. Sitting on a bench, Lu Qin muttered, "This is still the daytime scene. The Lord hasn't even appeared yet. If you don't have the help of the poor road, how can you fight? Even if you kneel on the ground and shout for help, you will have to see that the poor road has not eaten enough and has no energy. Just bend around." On the way, Lu Qin noticed that there were two big locust trees in the backyard with very thick shades of green. Not far from the stove, there was a small building with a foot deep. There were a few coffins inside, and the coffin panels were all open. They were all withered bones that had no place to be buried. Lu Qin didn't shy away from these anyway, otherwise, among the 7 minds of the 3 palms, how could there be a real man with white bones? Someone leaned against the door of the stove. She was a pretty girl, blushing and charming. The girl pursed her red lips, clapped her palms lightly, and gave a feed to remind the young Taoist that someone is coming, and then squinted and smiled. "You little Taoist, you are not considered a master of art, and you dare come here to open a stove and cook. You say that you want to find a good place to die. What do you think? It's those strange and novels that cheat money. This girl came here without knowing it. She almost scared a person to death. I really thought that scaring a person would not pay for my life. Fortunately, I am a fairy and courageous." Lu Qin smiled and spoke, sitting on the small bench, turning around, lifting the bamboo tube in his hand, pointing to the yellow paper talisman sticking to the door of the stove, and looking at the young girl with refined peony. With a chance and her 800 or 900 years of cultivation, she is considered invincible in the nearby counties and counties. She is not considered a prestige here, just helping those female ghosts to continue their lives. Keep things a bit, otherwise those female ghost sisters who just need to be a little bit cruel, just have a mouth or twist a few waists. Those young and strong men who are happy here, I am afraid they will only there was a skin bag with an empty inside and a loose yang. Even if it was thrown out of the ghost house, it would be dead soon. The girl stretched out her hand and wanted to take off the talisman of ordinary material, but the talisman was touched by her fingertips, and she felt a distressed burning feeling. She struck a spirit, immediately stopped her hand, and weighed it. Adhering to the tenet of carefully sailing the ship for 10,000 years, Yen Ran smiled, "As long as you don't be nosy today and stay as you please." Those in the courtyard, I didn't provoke them, they broke into the dojo and asked me for trouble, obviously it's not the kind of people who give up, since they are anxious to reincarnate one by one. I can't blame me for sending them off the boat. When the young Taoist priest saw this, he looked smug and laughed. "How, do you know that it's amazing? This talisman is a masterpiece of the trail. One of the tricks. Just ask if you are afraid." The girl twitched her lips, dare to ask this immortal Long, what is his name? How old is it? The young Taoist priest had a disgusting expression on his face. I don't understand the rules, the monk doesn't speak his name or his life, but in the name of Xian Chang, Xiao Dao can reveal a secret for you. The girl nodded and said, listen with good ears. The young Taoist coughed a few times and moisturized his throat, and then he straightened his waist and said loudly, Qian Kun Su De has no name, evacuated a husband from the world, a real hero with a strong character, a savage and solitary, living only on the top of a mountain. The morning meal, Yunxia, Nate, drinking dew, is the most upright and refreshing. No one knows about the wall for 100 years, the golden crow fire wrapped the golden core, formed the golden core, made the furnace, made the yang shin yu yujing, learned the immortal unlearned the baby, the moon is the cold pool is quiet, the bottom of the sea is breathing, and the sky is soaring. I have forgotten to prove it for thousands of years. The blue bird on the horizon can also be tied to the sky. A dream, in the ant locust. At first, the girl listened attentively, but soon she raised her hand and yawned, and she was telling the story. But your sour and sour words don't seem to rhyme too much. The young Taoist priest seemed to see her thoughts and said without embarrassment, girl, you only need to understand what you mean. This is called ecstasy. As for rhyming, it is very minor and quite trivial. The girl suddenly said sternly, I changed my mind. I was just looking at you annoying, but it turned out to be even more annoying, so I didn't keep guests, and I left here quickly. Don't change your attention, the poor surname is Su Mingwuguai. As for the Dao name, the aptitude in the mountain is still low, and the experience outside the mountain has not been long, and he has not been able to accumulate 3,000 merits and consummation. There is no Dao name yet. The young Taoist also looked anxiously. In addition, there is a rule in the poor Dao line, saying that the ancestor does not speak the teacher. So if you ask about the ancestors of the Xiao Dao, there is no comment on the Dao lineage. When the girl heard this, her anger was suppressed, and she just sneered, that's like a teacher, and she moved out of the master name, so I can't scare people. The young Taoist priest seemed to be annoyed and said, can't you scare people? Ghosts scare you to death. The girl glanced at the other party's crown, waved her hand, let's go, don't join in the fun here. If you weren't looking at the face of the road in the past, at least you would go in and go out vertically today. I have to make you remember a little bit. Since the Taoism is not good enough and the skills are not good, don't think that you have the backing of a teacher, and you feel that there are no taboos and you can go everywhere. There are people outside, and you will suffer a lot. The girl Chiobua turned around, pointed a finger at the crown of the young Taoist priest, and smiled with one hand. Move out of the teacher's door quickly, so as to calm me, aunt, grandma. Then don't you know, I and your ancestors and elders are still good friends. Good old friend. I saw the handsome Taoist priest with red lips and white teeth. He heard the words as if he had been struck by thunder. How can you know that the old things happened hundreds of years ago? Leave this place and return to the Taoist temple in the mountains. The guy named Long Weishenren is him. He has no conscience. He is a thief and guilty thing. I don't think I am from a righteous background and dare not bring it back to the mountain. What if the vegetation has become the essence of life? Zhongtu Shen's how long there is also a Fox Yen Hall in the Heavenly Master's mansion in Hushan. She is not as good as mine. The girl looked faint and turned it over the old account. She was a little depressed and waved her hand. Okay, I already knew that you came from that high gods, otherwise you wouldn't wear this kind of crown on your head. Your status as a Taoist priest is of course. Really, but I am not those ignorant mountain spirits, the Taoist priests who know your line, and the authentic ones there, and the Qi Tianjun, are not the same Taoist priest at all. The incense is withered to a mess, and they are mixed with the gods. It's getting bleak year by year, and I can only live by selling private condoms. The young Taoist priest also sighed. I was really hit by the girl. It was a bleak situation that was not as good as that year. The girl said, "Isn't leaving yet. Really think that a broken talisman on the door can block me?" Lu Qin smiled and said, "The old saying goes that helping others is helping oneself. Going out to rely on friends, Xiao Dao, is just borrowing a place to have a New Year's Eve dinner. Maybe it can help you escape." Having said this, Lu Qin said with a smile, "This old saying and that common saying, no matter what is behind, we better have to listen to it." The girl sneered and said, "Little Taoist priest, do you know what realm auntie I am?" Lu Qin looked shocked and said, "Couldn't it be an old who is introverted and concealed?" The girl was short-tempered, because she was a golden immortal. Only He Bo of the Fen Shrine outside the city, and the county town god temple, only mistaken her for a sevuing vegetation spirit, so she has not been famous. The main reason is that Mengliang has 2 immortal mansions on the hills, which made her extremely jealous. If she hadn't had a hidden life-saving charm, she would have been detained by the immortal master in the mountains for a long time. In this holy house, there are naturally female ghosts, but the evil that is really suppressed is actually an old golden core ghost. In addition to the extremely high level of Taoism, the intention is extremely insidious. It was the secret plan of the early years. Through it was only by the hands of the Yangjin officials that Lu Gong's temple was torn down and occupied this feng shui treasure place as a dojo, in order to become the nascent sold by this. Even a peony plant was deliberately transplanted here, with the fragrance of the flower, to cover up its incomparable evil spirit. The reason why the heartless man named Xian Tongxian stopped here was because he found something wrong with the mansion. To surrender this evil ghost, first form a big formation to prevent the innocent from hurting the innocent, and then fight with the golden core ghosts, not hesitate to smash 2 mortal creatures, hurt the roots of the road, and suppress the ghosts deep underground. In a secret room where he was sealed up with a talisman, he said that he had returned to the gods, and he would invite the elders in the mountains to eradicate this scourge, but he never thought that there would be no day for him to meet again after he left. For so many years, almost every few years, she would use a talisman to learn from the Taoist priest, add a talisman to the door of the secret room deep underground, layer upon layer, the old talisman dissipates, and there are new ones. Fu posted. Just because of Fulu, the threshold is too high, she only has a little talent for cultivation, and she can't really pass it on, so she can only win by quantity. Once upon a time, before and after the flowers. The stars in the sky revolve, and the curtains on the earth hang down. Living in the mountains does not count the year, and enjoying the flowers is the immortal. The speaker just speaks on the lips, but the listener has to engrave it in his heart. Lu Qin embraced the burning bamboo tube, his eyes softened, and he smiled. The battle outside is not small. Then Bo Yi Xiu is going to win this door, and he is determined to win. The girl has also noticed it. The other party has already offered a killer, and can't ask God to surrender. True, even though they are 2 lingering Yinzi gods, it is obviously more than enough to deal with the 3 female ghost sisters under your hand. Besides, you, the golden pill, can protect your true body and guard it. Do you live in that blocked door? Anyway, Peng Dao finds it difficult, it's hard. The girl's expression changed slightly and she was about to go to rescue. Unexpectedly, the young Taoist priest just took a breath, and the yellow paper talisman on the door of the stove fell down, just falling on the girl's shoulder. The girl seemed to have been affixed with a fixed charm, a dignified golden core immortal. No matter how the golden core was operated to control the aura, she could not move half a step. Lu Qin put his face on the bamboo tube, looked at the anxious girl, smiled and said, "What's the hurry, just watch a good show. There are not many other people, but there are many friends on the mountain. By coincidence, there will be one today." The 2 lines of cause and effect that affect the body before are one person and one thing, one thickness and the other thin. The latter is the child, and the former is an old friend. This person was originally not in a hurry, but now he has noticed the clues, and he has begun to travel here quickly and quickly. Afterwards, Jiang Shangjin mistakenly thought that Yuanzhan was planning to present this golden pill to the Northern Golden Temple, which has a great relationship with the old temple. He decided to stop him and even made a ruthless word with Lao Zhuzi. As long as Xiao Yuanran came to Huanggeji to get the pill, Jiang Shangjin would let the young man of the Daquan dynasty die under Yuanzhan's eyelids, but if the old boat dared to send the pill, he would make Xiao Yuanran a fateful pill. Complete a pair of merits without missing the body, but did not have the life to go homeopathic and enter the nascent soul realm. Chen Pingan asked with a smile, about the old master of that golden core, fellow Taoists, can you always talk about it? Qing Tong hesitated for a moment, carefully brewing his words, chose some old calendars that could be spoken, and slowly said, this fellow Taoist, the true body is the first crane in the world, and it is said that he is still a 14th person who is only half a step away. Realm Great Monk, before he fell, to be precise, he took a trip to Bixiao Cave and Luobao Beach before the retreat. After the retreat failed, he left a complete golden pill. The old master looked like he was taking care of it on his behalf. This is because Qing Tong thinks about Mr. Zheng, and is willing to talk more about the inside story that can't be bought with money. Chen Pingan corrected, it might be more accurate to say that it is guardian. Because this ancient golden pill is not in the hands of the master of Laoguan, it is located between the cliffs of Huanggeji in the blessed land of Yunku, and it is far away from a Guandao temple separated by Banzhou mountains and rivers. And this golden pill can be regarded as a great mountain treasure of the rank of fairy soldiers, and it can be regarded as a kind of extremely rare kind of fairy soldiers. Just like the golden robe that Chen Pingan obtained from Jialonga back then, among the half-celestial soldiers, it is outstanding, and Chen Ping's silly sword, which was later lent to the right of Sui, appears to stand out among the magic weapons. The root lies in the word growth. Able to keep tempering, and then improve the rank. It is like the cultivation of human beings, breaking the realm one by one. Thinking of this, Chen Pingan suddenly said, it seems that the word Changxing, inverted the order, is growth. It's just that Qing Tong now has the most headache of these empty talks. Think about it, it is destined to not figure out why. Don't think about it, it seems that you will miss something. The rank of the monk's golden core, to a large extent, determines the great achievement of an immortal. It is similar to the so-called 3-year-old people. Of course it is not absolute, there are always special cases, but the reason why common sense is that there are no exceptions. Just like Chen Ping himself, he was not favored before, because his life porcelain was broken, and he was looked to death early. After that, he was able to get to where he is today. Chen Pingan asked, why would Jiang Shangjin borrow the sword with Yuanpin? In Yunku Fudi, Jiang Shangjin once said, I want to borrow Mr. S sword today, and I will spit light in the dark, but Yuanzhan denied it, and his expression did not seem to be fake. According to Jiang Shangjin, the reason why he spent his time in the lotus roots was to help Lu Fang rank among the top 10 people in the world. It is best to rank high, and then he can let his best friend Lu Fang take advantage of the opportunity to obtain a handy weapon. Qing Tong was silent. This matter really cannot be said. Once the secret is broken, Qing Tong is worried that he will always look at the master and turn the old account. The prudent eyes and unforgiving of the Bixiao cave master were once recognized by the world. Chen Pingan thought of Jiang Shangzhen's comment on Yuanpin's, you are a sword, and couldn't help but smile. His own chief of the week, just can talk. Qing Tong was silent for a long time, probably because he was also worried about being held hostage by the person next to him, and tentatively said, I saw Lu Xing later, ask yourself. Chen Pingan said, what's hard to guess? Ni Yuanping can actually be regarded as half a chi practitioner in Uwa footy. He has opened up a brand new path, which is refining the sword with the body. Jiang Shangjin said that Ni Yuanping is proficient in the 3 teaching questions www. Until novel. Calm countless, but is suppressed by the avenues of the blessed lotus roots, so that a clear Taoist heart has only a prototype, and will eventually be accepted by the old master, please out of a blessed land. What's more, Lu Qin also leaked secrets and talked about the road to enlightenment of the female champion in our continent. Qin Tong admired him, and he deserved to be Beta Shengjing Zhongzhong. He really dared to think, really can think. No wonder the absurd question of, am I a Taoist ancestor, is entangled. Qin Tong asked, I heard that the fishermen who like this way are still paying attention to nesting in advance. Chen Pingon said, usually it is to catch big fish, but it's not a problem to nest in the turbulent water. Just find a pile of rocks and you can gather fish. Qin Tong asked tentatively, does this statement have any deep meaning? Chen Pingon said, it doesn't mean anything to you. If you listen to Lu Qin and Ni Yuanping, you'll probably feel sad. Qin Tong did not refute anything. Chen Pingon lifted the rod again to disperse the bait, and then threw the rod into the water again. But in the courtyard of the former Lugong temple site, the clouds rose in an instant, and the 3-headed female ghost instantly fell into the white mist. Looking around, she couldn't see her 5 fingers, and looked up again. It was clear that it was not dusk yet, but the moon was in the sky, and the years were faint. They could hear the guard knocking on the clappers and the night sounds like soldiers passing by. The next moment, their vision suddenly opened up, and a deep-water long bridge appeared. On the bridge, there was a vermilion Highgate mansion and a hall. Towering, 2 corridors lined with forests, the stone outside the door is angry and terrifying, and there is a line of armored soldiers, lined up under the corridor. Frosty Halberd is cold, and there are 2 purple-clothed official robes, one of whom is slender. But he was as thin as a firewood, with a white fat and tiny beard with a jade belt around his waist. Behind the 3-headed female ghost, standing far away from the mountain, one of the old men in genie, and the 2 gods in the temple, held their fists and smiled. Yu Lao and the 2 great immortals have taken action. The Dali imperial court once abolished countless imperial temples on a continent, some of them were in charge, and their backgrounds were innocent. Dali often had other arrangements, but after all, there were still some who refused to obey the constraints, especially those from an improper background, and could not stand the Dallas Ministry of Rights and Penalties. Inspecting, they can only give up temples and statues, and find a way to steal their lives. Although the foundation is gone, not only the golden body is shaken, but it is also a lot shorter, but it is better than being a big Li. The officials of the 2 rituals and penalties and the monks who accompanied the army overturned the old accounts and smashed the golden body on the spot. And even if it is reduced to a lonely ghost, as long as it can rebuild temples in the mountains and quiet places of those small vassal countries, and get incense, you can reassemble the golden body. Nowadays, the Dali court has only half of the country in its heyday. That great blasphemy is the boundary. The entire southern part of Aquarius Island has been restored, and places like Mengliang country and Qinghuan country don't dare to stay for a long time, but there are always other places that can be used as shelters. And Yamazawa Yeshio, who started by killing people and overcoming goods, has a ghost gate, which is to collect disciples, of course the kind of disciples who enter the house. The master of the church apprentice starved to death. It may even kill the master, so I have to refrain from teaching the killer secretly, and never teach the method of suppressing the bottom of the box, and prevent the disciple from getting the truth, and then let the disciple make a promise to swear a poisonous oath, and then control it with secret techniques. Otherwise, if there are not a few helpers around, it is easy to be weak and difficult to make a lot of money. The main hall originally hung a plaque inscribed by the emperor's Fonglei Palace, but it has not been hung for many years. After it was removed, it was finally promoted from the ancestral hall to the palace, and was beaten back to its original form. In the end, even the first ancestral temple could not be maintained. Only a gossip pavilion and a dream character monument outside the pavilion were left. The original appearance seems to be dependent on each other. In fact, there is a hidden mystery in that piece of Mingxi steel, and there is a poem similar to Dao Ju in the hollow seal. What's the explanation for the opening sentence, "I am born and die alone, but who knows who is false and who is true?" Finally, the old man returned to the main hall of the old Lu Gong temple and twisted 3 sticks of incense from his sleeve. Holding the incense, worshipped for 3 times to pay homage to the Taoist Pure Yang who taught himself the past and had the grace of preaching. The 2 warriors who were fighting at first were surprised that no one dared to ask a question, let alone hands-on. An old guy who blindly looked at the outside circle and Bai Wumi, who would dare to touch the mold. At the stove room, Lu Qin gently shook his head. The river goes east, the setting sun goes down, and wanderers come south. The Taoist temple is spent, a real person asks, who knows for? The girl at the door still stood in place, neither asking for mercy nor just now. There was a table and 2 benches, as if either, or as if he had long legs, swayed from elsewhere and walked over to the stove. After Lu Qin took his seat, he poured himself a bowl of wine, filled a large bowl of rice, and put a chopsticks with winter bamboo shoots, and exclaimed, "The taste is very good, it's amazing." The old man in Confucian shirt glanced more lazily at the 2 groups of men and horses, as if giving orders, all stay where they are, waiting to be sent. Chunyang Taoist Lu Yen is his preacher. Although the 2 sides have no master or apprenticeship, the old scholars always regard Lu Yen as a mentor. Then Chunyang Taoist is the only Lugong temple in this world, which has a certain meaning. This is the dojo of mentor Lu Yen. Then he came to the door of the secret room under the ground, and looked at the dense seal of the talisman above. The old scholar laughed dumbly. Did the ghost draw a talisman? His figure dissipated, condensed again, and appeared in the secret room without breaking the prohibition of the talisman. The ghost that had been consumed by Fu Lu slowly raised his head, grinning and said, "Looking for death?" The old scholar asked, "Do you know how the words morality is not worthy are written? You are such a sneaky person, if you don't want to hide, you dare to expect to steal Lu Gong's temple for a long time." Without waiting for the other party to answer anything, the old scholar had already beaten him to death with a sleeve. On the square, the illusion remains the same. It is still the scene of the long bridge in the main hall and the densely armored ancestral temple under the corridor. The fat immortal wearing a purple official robe, like a mourning concubine, said, "Is it a gentleman from Guanhu Academy?" Also, in this way, didn't our brothers hit the tip of the knife head-on? The tall and thin big immortal looked at the old man in brocade clothes, and said angrily, "It's all good things you provoke." The other 3 vain female ghosts who are haunting the nightmare here are far more relaxed than frightened. In the hands of a Confucian gentleman, he was only punished in accordance with the regulations of the academy. It is better to do what you should do than to be eaten by the 2 great immortals. That is the real immortal immortality. The old scholar came to the stove and didn't even look at the girl who was sticking at the door as if she was a door god, but stopped at the door. Lu Qin hurriedly put down his chopsticks, turned his head and said, "Brother Shizhou, after many years, come, let us sit down and drink and talk slowly." In the 2 generations of Hauran Tianxia and Owafuti, the bookish scholar in front of him was named Lu and his name was Shizhou. Kaizhou carried away her sorrow, and blew her dream to Shizhou. Outside the temple, Qingtong only felt that Chen Pingan was sitting here fishing. Even if he waited for Lu Xun aside, he could just sit on the ground like this. Qingtong couldn't help but ask, whether it is a cultivator or a pure martial artist, what's the point of learning that vulgar sun fishing in the water? The point is that Chin Pingon hasn't caught a fish until now. For the temple blessing of Fen Shrine, this pond is just a pond. Chin Pingon held a pole in one hand and pointed at the pond with one finger, and said, "But to the old master and you, what is this pond? It's Tonggi's How. So you don't care whether the few swimming fish in it are big or small. It's life or death. The fish in the pond can't escape anyway. Even if there are great monks who leap over the dragon gate, they are like the fallen leaves of the locust tree at the entrance of the temple. I believe there will be a day when the leaves will return to their roots." Qing Tong started to have a headache again, and immediately changed the subject, with a faint expression in his eyes. "How do these Yinzi gods who are running around, how do they return to their roots?" Chen Pingon said, "Then what if you treat the whole world as a pond?" Qing Tong was speechless. Chen Pingon laughed and said, "There are some questions, don't think too much, just try to stop, just like the ancients who made poetry to avoid October cold." Qing Tong understood that October cold that the poet evaded, and was quite happy for a while, and finally no longer confused. It was not easy. Chen Pingon asked, "If there weren't that earth-shaking change 10,000 years ago, what would your ultimate pursuit be?" Qing Tong leaned on the back of his chair, took off the power fence above his head, and shook it as a fan, and said, "I still don't dare to expect to be able to climb to the top and ascend to the platform. I am afraid of death. As in ashes, if you don't have it, you're gone. I'm from a bad background, and it's hard to learn how to cultivate. It's so difficult to practice. There are barriers everywhere. Other monks may be a matter of one or two thoughts, but I have to think carefully about it. For hundreds of years, of course, they will cherish the hard-won opportunity more than Xiao Mo and Yang Ji. They dare not do a feat, dare not even the slightest effort. In those long years between the world and the earth, it seemed that from the first Taoist, the next saying began to spread. The sergeant heard the Tao and walked diligently. It was the 10 Hao in the world, and there the Taoist not far behind, such as the great ancestor of Tuashin, the master of Bixiadong Cave, the demon sword repair by Jing, Shema, the old master of the golden core, etc. The sergeant gained the Tao and was ascended to heaven. Guan, ranks in the immortal class. It means that by walking up to the two ascending platforms that respectively control the male and female earth immortals, they become a brand new of the ancient heaven. The corporal obtains the Tao, the land immortal, and the resident for many years. This is me. This kind of dull qualified gas trainer is the ultimate pursuit in his heart. The ancient Qi practitioners were able to practice Tao. Among the many ascending avenues, the rank of the monk's golden core is similar to that of the monk's golden core. Among the earliest day ascents, there were more than a dozen species such as Xiaoju, riding a dragon, Quan Luan, riding a crane, and Huahong. After that, there were those who pulled the house and sword, and the shared house sword, and after that, there were many relics of ghosts and immortals that soared in the night. After Qing Tong finished speaking, he found that Qin Pingon seemed to have turned a deaf ear to his mind, and his state of mind was still unwavering. Qing Tong felt a little boring, not looking at the scroll, glanced at the empty fish basket on the shore, and asked, "It's just that difficult? Catch the fish. Is the bait wrong, or your fishing skills are not good?" Qin Pingon smiled and nodded, "I'm really not good at fishing. I've been better at one thing in my life. Unless I'm starving to death, I won't eat bait or bite. Being in a long river of time, it's hard not to be caught as a fish by people on the shore." Qing Tong asked again, "How are you sure that Master Lu will definitely go to the Lugong temple site?" Chen Pingon looked indifferent and asked, "The ruins of Lugong temple. How did you know about it?" Qing Tong was stunned, thinking repeatedly, still breaking his head and not understanding why Chen Pingon had said this. At the Fen shrine behind them, there is still the Imperial Fonglei Palace plaque hidden in the warehouse, and the 8 diagrams pavilion and the dream character tablet on the side of the ghost house in the city, as well as the girl with the 1,000-year-old peony, and her Qian Tongxian, a Taoist from the side branch of the God sect, and the Taoist name Dragontail, and the golden pill ghost suppressed in the secret room by the unique talisman of the God sect. Not all prove that this mansion is where the ruins of Lu Gong's temple is located. Chen Pingan smiled and said, "It's not only a game of waiting for the rabbit, but also catching the turtle in the urn." You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.